preparatory comment. We have a number of open issues, but I believe a lot of them are resolvable today. If we look like we're close come noon, we're going to extend for at least another hour, and then not do tomorrow. So if we get there today, we won't do tomorrow. And with that, Parker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll do my best to get through my portion of this as quickly as we can.
Brevity is good.
You see on the screen kind of the outline for what we plan to cover. This also matches up with the order of contents in your packets that you have in front of you on the table and that we'll follow along on the screen. We'll start with a review of the Finance Advisory Committee budget recommendations, how the staff responded to those recommendations. And at this point, we've had several review sessions, so it's kind of hard to keep track of it all, but I'll try to follow this and the changes going from one meeting to the next to the next. Briefly, since we've already talked about this at some length earlier, I'll remind you of the LUB water supply proposal that is now reflected in this budget and also reflected in changes to the capital plan and water and sewer rates. We have income statements, P&Ls for 11 years, same thing with capital plan. I will present rather in a bit of detail the changes that have been made to that capital plan as we've gone through the various review sessions, including today. Likewise, reserve plan, cash flow, debt schedules, and then probably the most fun part of the meeting is dealing with unresolved issues for board discussion. From where Kevin and I sat, we heard things like beach security, dock rates, the wave attenuator, new docks and how to fund those, housing starts, golf unlimited rates, Kahiti kitchen expansion study, and others. And there'll be a couple of presentations dealing with at least a couple of those topics today. And then at the very end of your packet, division and department income statements. I don't plan to go through those in detail, but if you've got questions about any, we'll be happy to address those. So next slide, please, Beth. Oh, back up one. There you go. Okay, so we're here on October 26th, October 27th if needed. What will happen over this next week or so is we'll take board decisions and guidance coming out of this meeting. We'll incorporate that into those adjustments into a final budget. And the board gets another shot on November the 4th. Now, this is part of the regular board meeting. We don't plan to take hours with this at that meeting. It's more of a quick review of, okay, here's what it looks like now that these changes coming out of today and possibly tomorrow if needed, what that looks like. And then all of that headed toward formal approval of the budget on November the 18th. So next slide, please. Okay, this next several slides summarizes, this first one is the Finance Advisory Committee budget recommendations, and I've underlined and bold typed those things that are currently in this version, this run of the budget. So if you want to know where we are, what's in and what's not, these pages are a good place to start. So the 5% assessment rate is in through 24, drops down to 4% thereafter. The water system improvements, there is $300,000 in 21, 22, and 31. There is no water tank. Those are for booster pumps and other system improvements. The LUB water supply proposal is now reflected in the cost structure, and water and sewer rates have been adjusted to maintain profitability. We have now increased the number of water meter replacements from 360 per year to 450 per year. It's roughly 10% of the installed base and reflects a 10-year replacement cycle. The grapple truck, which was approved by the board, I think a couple of meetings ago, has now been removed from the 21 capital plan because it's already being purchased and that project is in progress. So we had it in 21, had to buy it sooner than expected, and that's now been removed from the 21 capital plan. The wave attenuator, that has been a subject of considerable discussion to this point. A lot of uncertainty around it, but some of that uncertainty hopefully will be resolved shortly. We now have scheduled the dive team and evaluation team from New York, scheduled to come in the first week of November, I think the 1st through the 5th. In this budget run, we have a 3% rate increase for docks and PWCs. Kayaks is now 0% increase from this current 2020 year. We have new docks at Tenacity Basin. We'll need to consider some funding alternatives because there's a second set of docks. I'll catch that on a subsequent page in 22. Jeff has been asked to look at the dip in road work in 22. To this moment, he has not made any changes in that. The Finance Committee supported the Kahidi bunker renovations at $250 per year for 2 years. That is in there. We now have an unlimited twilight cart option priced at $400 in conjunction with unlimited twilight golf rate, green fee rate. Committee recommended that we reconsider the addition of 3 more people to ACC codes enforcement and 1 admin person. What is in here now is 1 more codes enforcement person beginning July 1 and a second codes enforcement person beginning October 1. The admin person is in beginning January 1. And we have cut back on vehicle cost. Instead of full-size trucks, we have budgeted for smaller vehicles, $50,000 for 2 vehicles instead of $100,000. And the committee recommended that we acknowledge the possibility that rec memberships might not have hit bottom, may recover more slowly in 21, and develop a contingency plan for this case. No real changes to the budget proposal, but I know Simon and company are considering what they would do if things turn out worse than expected. We've already covered the LUB water supply proposal in detail. Just to point out, though, the rate of $1.94 per 1,000 gallons, that's the wholesale rate, is in the budget beginning January 1, 2021. And subsequent increases in the 10-year plan, 22 and 23, assuming that LUB meets their targets for and commitments for commencing construction of infrastructure improvements and completion of those improvements in 22 and 23. So what's
Parker,
in? Yes.
Parker, can you go back to those last 2? What did you use a midpoint for those increases in those years?
I believe it was January 1, but Kevin, do you recall, is it 1/1?
Yeah, that's how the model works.
Yeah, we,
So,
sure, I mean, if you think it's going to be a mid-year, we could build in some kind of an average, but,
Well, isn't the commitment in the agreement, Bruce, that they would finish the tank, the big tank?
by September of 22.
And what about the other infrastructure improvements?
They-
Weren't those by the end of 22 or 3?
They were going to start those sometime in possibly 21.
Okay.
So when they officially start them, you may have those in 21, not 22. So that's my only point is, per the contract, we have to allow them to increase the rate on January, the first one, $1.94. And then when they officially have a notice to proceed with their contract and they actually start working on it, then they get their second increase. So it may very well happen in 21 as well.
21 or 2?
21. As soon as they start working on the improvements,
Yeah.
as soon as they start working on the improvements, they get their increase. So if they got an increase in January and then moved out and started, say, in June with their construction, this is gonna be about a 1.5-year project for them. So they're gonna have to start sometime in 21 to finish it in 22 like they had planned to, so.
Well, that probably deserves some more discussion, because if we're looking at a mid-year bump in wholesale water rates, I'd suggest the board consider a mid-year adjustment to the pricing charged.
Well, that makes sense
That's
to
my
me.
point. Yeah. That's my point.
But right now, that's not in there. Right now, it's
Well,
January
does
1.
anybody have an objection to that? So, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Bruce, we'll get with you as to the timing, but,
And that too, and the last one there, they will finish by September of 22 is the way. And when they're finished and put it in operation, they get their third increase.
okay, we'll get with you and make sure we get that the way you are anticipating it.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of capital, we now have 300,000 in each year, 21, 22, and 31. Reflects the installation of booster pumps and other improvements to the system. There is no water tank in the 10-year plan.
Hey, Parker, on that note, in reviewing the capital plan, I did notice that we do have something in the budget in the out years for a water storage tank in Mialakwa.
Mialakwa is correct.
So that needs to stay?
It was actually put in last year kind of as a plug in case we need it.
That's why I'm asking, because of what we've now done with LUB, are we gonna need it?
What do you think?
I'd take it out for now.
Okay.
So that's like 1.8 million in the 9th year, and 152,000 the year before that. So yeah, those are big numbers. Yeah.
Okay, take it out.
Okay, got it. Okay, and the
See how
minimum,
fast we're making decisions?
hey, you guys are on a roll, let's keep it up. So these minimums and averages reflect the January 1 rate increase and corresponding pricing. But, you know, if we have a mid-year bump in both, then, you know, those would go up.
So I have a
proportionally.
question on that too. Sorry, it may not be for you, Parker, but so I understand the increase in the water rate. What's the basis for the increase in the sewer rate?
That sewer rate was, actually, the origins of that date back to last year, where there was, an acknowledgement that we're seeing increased maintenance costs in the sewer system, particularly for things like, you know, lift stations, not booster pumps, lift stations, wet well coatings and other maintenance items, general inflation, and just a need to keep up with that.
So that's completely independent of the
Independent of the
LUB
water
agreement.
increase, yes,
So that
absolutely.
won't, so if we do get a water increase in mid-year next year, the sewer will not change?
That's correct, it would
Okay.
just hit the water side.
Thank you.
Good point.
I think, Marty, where the confusion come in is that your sewer is based on the amount of water you use, but, you know what I'm saying?
Volume, not cost.
Volume, right.
Yeah.
Volume, not pricing.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, Beth, next slide, please. So, this slide is dealing with the capital plan changes, particularly coming out of the October 16th meeting. But first off, we initially changed the $40,000 beach security capital project to $7,000 of capital and $9,000 of seasonal expense. October 16th, at board direction, we changed that back to a $40,000 capital, sort of as a placeholder, as I understand it, and no seasonal expense. So that's what's in here right now, $40K of capital, no seasonal labor. We were asked to justify the vacuum excavator for the sewer department based on cost savings.
Hold on, Parker, I think
Yes.
you have a question, Carla. At the 11th hour, at the last meeting, the decision was made to put that 40,000 plug back in until, and Simon is going to be giving us an update on what the actual numbers are going to be and the rationale for that today.
Yeah, basically, we put it back to the state it was in before the last meeting because we had not reached agreement.
I was listening to that meeting, but I didn't know that it took out the idea of having a seasonal employee. I thought you still wanted that, so is that just?
There's a presentation we're going to make today.
Gotcha.
Okay, so more to come on that issue. The vacuum excavator, we did go back to Chad Johnson and had him pull some invoices from Roto-Rooter and make an assessment as to what portion of those could have been avoided if we had had this equipment. We came out at less than a 3-year payback on the equipment, but that's just kind of a first cut at an economic evaluation of that project. I'd suggest that we leave that in the capital plan, but at the time the funding request comes through, there would be a more detailed economic evaluation of the economics of that project.
Anybody have an issue with that? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, Tenacity Docs, we've got $188,000 project in. I've suggested we leave that in the capital plan.
Excuse me.
But at the time the funding request
Mute
comes.
your PC.
Yeah, I'm off. Sorry,
Replay.
I added 30 seconds. I apologize.
It's rare that you get to hear yourself talk in a
Wasn't that
presentation
true?
like that. I know. Deja vu all over again. Okay, Tenacity Docs, we've got $188,000 above the line in '21, and $228,000 above the line in '22. We need to have some more discussion about those, particularly the funding and the '22 set of docks. For now, $220,000 for the wave attenuator above the line is in there as a placeholder in '21. We now know the structure evaluation is to begin early November. We had approved, I think it was $55,000 of funding for the evaluation, with the expectation that that would be taken off of the $220,000. But the fact is, we don't know what the condition is of the wave attenuator or how much we really should budget for that in '21. So hopefully we'll get some indications of that early November. May or may not have time to hit the budget approval on November the 16th or 18th, forget the date at the moment. But I will offer to the board there is an opportunity to adjust that even after that November board meeting.
Parker, the good thing about that is that structure evaluation, the team that's doing that, they don't have any skin in this game, meaning they don't sell docks, they don't repair docks, they're completely independent, so they should give us an independent review.
Good, that's the way to do it. Kahidi boat launch is above the line, and we increased that from $18,000 to $20,000, just a small increase. Likewise, $20,000 for a Kahidi pier is above the line, and we removed $70,000 to pave the Kahidi dock entrance and parking lot, but added in $10,000 of expense to repair the dock entrance and parking lot.
So I have a question, Parker. On both of these, the launch as well as the pier, as well as the new pier, as well as the next new pier, is that your question about how we're going to fund these?
Distinguish between piers and docks. Pier, as I understand it, would be like a fishing pier and maybe a little day dock. The docks that are, in my mind, need some more discussion are the $188,000 and the $228,000.
My question is the pier and They don't come out of the dock
No.
reserves?
Oh, they would,
Yes.
yeah, they would.
So you're stretching that reserve now pretty strong, pretty wide.
Well, it'll be negative.
It'll be negative, yeah.
But the 70,000 was above the line for.
Was it in,
pay-
out of the dock?
It wasn't,
Yeah,
it was in
it-
R&M, wasn't it?
Not in the consolidated budget, it said it came out of docks.
Really?
And not to be drawing this out, but does not that fly in the face of what Winston talked about before with the private lease of slips being an individual contract, which should be paid out of dock reserves versus this, which is public? Flies right in the face in my mind. So why are you taking it out of dock reserves?
That's a good question.
I don't think it's any different than paving the road in the parking lot, though. Do you?
Absolutely, and hopefully I'll get a chance to cover all of this a little bit later on.
Yeah, the alternatives, well, the pier, I could see that being funded from the Amenity Reserve, and the parking lot and entrance, that arguably could be funded from R&M, just if you're looking for places to find the money. Okay, moving on.
What about the dock attenuator, Parker? Why would that not be R&M?
Well, it
I mean, the wave attenuator, sorry.
it primarily benefits docks. Now, you
Well,
you could make the case that the day docks are a public amenity, not a private amenity, and, okay, maybe you split it. But if it were not for the boat slips at the yacht club and at Tenacity, would argue you would not need a wave attenuator.
You're exactly right, and the docks belong to the dock captains, right?
The docks belong to TVPOA
There you go.
Incorporated.
So we're protecting a POA asset.
I think you're just stretching things there.
I don't
Mr.
think
White.
so.
I don't think so either.
Well, you're
I mean,
entitled to
that's
your
a
opinion.
POA, but
I'm
that's a
entitled to mine.
POA asset and amenity that is used by the marketing department to sell this community. I
Big
mean,
time.
it's
Well,
definitely.
so is everything else we
Right.
own in the POA. So let's
That's
get
right,
rid
but
of
we don't
all of
take
our
it out of
reserve
the dock
accounts and just
fund.
operate out of one big slush fund.
No,
Right.
let's take it back to either 0 or 100 and operate it like you do all other amenities.
Well, okay, I say then, let's do a big study on this dock thing and see really, really, really what their expenses are.
Absolutely.
And because right now, they're not absorbing their expenses.
No, but at the same time, they're not
paying-
over $5.25 million a year in cash generated, or $525,000 a year cash generated or expended.
So they're putting money into the fund that's paying for their.
But so is
repair
golf, and
maintenance.
so is rec, and so is the restaurants and everything else we have around
Right,
here.
And they're
if-
getting all their stuff taken care of.
Right, and if you read between the lines.
Well,
if
you
read-
just remember that 2 years ago, when we made huge expenses on amenities and other, we basically said that we were going to pull back on our capital budget, and now we're spending like there's no tomorrow.
Okay, then let's do it this way. Let's give up $24,000 a year in revenue. Let's not market this as a place that people moving in here can have boats. Let's don't put in any more docks. Let's live exactly as it is. Either eliminate the dock reserve or fund it 100%, and let's go on with our rat killing.
And explain to our
I
property
hope
owners
you're
how
being,
we're.
I hope you're being.
No, I'm answering your question.
Yeah, because then we have to explain to our property owners how we're $1 million to the good, but
I
they can't
would
have their
just
docks.
suggest that I don't think that we need to do all of this in 1 year. Let's stretch it out. Let's stretch it out like we said we were going to do 2 years ago when we completely depleted our amenity reserve fund.
Well,
Bruce, it's already been
let
stretched out.
me-
It's
yeah.
stretched to the point of breaking.
let me understand this. So are we arguing that we don't do docks in the next 2 years?
No, not absolutely
I
not.
thought we already made that decision, that we would put one set of docks in 21 and one set in 22. Am I wrong in that?
No.
You are correct.
Okay.
Moving on.
And the 70,000 that was
I don't think we-
earmarked for, well, let me finish. Sure. That was earmarked for Kahiti dock entrance and parking lot, was that in the budget for next year?
Yes.
It was. It is
Okay.
no longer.
So now we're eliminating that, and in its place, we're spending 50 on something different. So basically, overall, it's a $20,000 savings.
Okay, but when do you plan to do the dock and entrance? It's not gonna sit there. She's gonna come back next year and say, now that we got this other stuff, we need a dock entrance and parking
Well, we'll
lot.
argue about that next year. So,
We already have
but
dock entrance and
here's the issue is, there's a large piece of developable land down there. And if it gets developed by whoever, you know, if you've paved that parking lot,
Right.
you basically are gonna dig it up again.
That's why I said it's like lighting money on fire. There's
I
no need to
understand
pave
that.
that parking lot.
So I understand what you're saying, Bruce, but, you know, I think overall, you know, we've already kind of come to this conclusion. I mean, am I wrong,
No.
No.
Marty?
No, the only thing that I wanted to add to that, in general, as we look at our capital plan, you know, we kind of just let everything fly through that's replacement capital. I think we need to be looking at each one of those and saying, do we really need to be acting on those? Rather than just saying, well, it's replacement capital, we're gonna do it, because that comprises what, 95% of our
That's
capital budget. So I know it's changing the subject a little bit, but it kind of goes along with what Bruce said, is that we've got to be diligent on how we spend our money. We just can't spend. We all know that, but if we look at concrete things, which is part of this process, what are we approving in the capital budget plan, and do those things really need to be approved?
Well, and frankly, and if you look at even this year, you know, a lot of what was in the capital plan as replacements, especially in the golf world, have been moved out 5 and 6 years because they've done a better job of lengthening the life of their equipment. And that happens every year. So just because, what you got to do when you're planning a replacement of an asset is you assume, you figure out what its useful life is. And that's when you budget for it and reserve for it, is at the end of its useful life. Now, if you can get another year or 2 out of it, that's all gravy, but you still have to plan for the useful life.
Understood, and that's where my point is.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've done too in the past, is I've budgeted for end of useful life, but we've decided at the point that useful life is a little bit longer. So that's the kind of stuff we just need to be making sure we're looking at.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
And indeed.
That makes sense.
Indeed, we do that, golf being an obvious example. But
Well,
I think.
public works trucks, I mean, geez, we drive those things into the ground.
Yeah.
They're well beyond their useful lives. Yeah.
Rightly or wrongly, the message has been received by the department heads that the pain of bringing forth an unbudgeted capital project far exceeds the benefit enjoyed when one defers a capital project into a later year.
So we did send one positive message this year.
Just saying.
Well, but that's a good point, Parker, because, I mean, we've all lived that. People put stuff in the budget because they're afraid of not having it in the budget if they need it, and we end up, a lot of times, putting more in the budget than what's really needed. And somehow, we've got to be able to be honest with each other as much as we can be. The POA employees, I know they're doing the best job they can of being sure we're replacing things at the right time and not operating in emergency mode. But at the same time, we need to be looking at everything and say, okay, what do we really need? And maybe that decision's made when we're actually looking at doing the replacement.
Well, it is, and this is a two-step process. You budget first, you approve later. So at the time that funding requests get brought forward, there is a more in-depth analysis. We have hard dollar bids and quotes on what it costs to do the project, and the department heads also do a more thorough job of justifying the basis for that. And if the existing equipment can last another year or longer, then they push it out. I think they manage that honestly and manage it pretty well.
Okay.
You know, not to keep us too long, but Marty, I think one thing that kind of keeps in check a little bit about the point you brought up is when we looked at that 15-year historical, and that's actual numbers, that's not a budget or a forecast. you know, there's a certain spend that it takes to run the village, and part of that is the maintenance and replacing capital. And I think you would see an anomaly in a year that people suddenly are trying to either game it by sandbagging it, or go the other way and say, hey, I'm completely, you know, I'm not gonna ask for anything, and go the other way, where you're gonna create problems down the road. I think, you know, history kind of proves out a little bit that, you know, we try to be transparent and reasonable in those budgets and requests.
All right, and I haven't looked at the new version of this yet, but in that very line, Kevin, I think that, and maybe we just need to look at those numbers, but I was seeing in the outgoing years of maintenance expense that it was actually dropping, and I was a little surprised by that. So we'll look at that as we get to it.
Okay.
Okay, covered courts, we had design in '22 and construction in '23. That has now been moved below the line with a notation, possible funding via Timeless Teleco Foundation, private funding.
So Parker, I had a question on
Yes.
that one too. So the numbers that Timeless Teleco and the Pickleball Club are publishing are $325,000 all in. So is there any reason why this number doesn't agree with that?
I hadn't heard the 325 number, but,
That's what they're publishing.
okay.
And that includes the design cost.
Yes.
Because the actual project itself was at 300.
I believe it was like
That's
100.
both phases, that includes the roof.
Yeah, I think what they're saying is 100,000 for the courts and then 200 for the roof.
Right. So 150 for the roof? 150 for the roof?
No, we're looking at 300, 325.
Yeah,
Okay,
325,
so it's a 150 for the courts and 150 for the roof.
It's two stages.
Okay.
170.
So the answer is, they've,
3.25.
they've looked at it, you've had somebody look at it and give you price estimates, and we're making an estimate.
Right.
Yeah, I was just
Okay.
asking for the difference, that's all. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fine.
And we put the RFP out, so we get the actuals.
Sure, sure.
I just want us to be consistent in our
We'll
messaging.
we'll get with Simon and pin those numbers down. Do you do the design work in '22 and construct in '23 still?
That's their target.
So design is how much? Do we know?
That
25?
20,000 is right,
I'm,
based on what they've told us.
I'm surprised by that timing too, because I thought it was gonna be potentially even this year, if not next year, for the courts.
Yes. I would agree
So-
with that. We're about a third of the way there for the money.
Yeah.
Oh, it's another question. What happens when we hit 22 for the design at 20,000, and we're looking at 400,000 the next year? At the budget cycle meeting of next year, would we be, and this is predicting the future, I guess, would we be willing to say they've got a significant part of the money, have not reached the full, and we fund the remainder?
I don't think we do that at this point.
I don't think that's the intent.
No.
I think the intent is to
It
do
is-
it once
question-
we have
Because
the money.
you gotta remember, you know, what Timeless Teleco is
Oh, I
all
know.
about.
I know.
It's really about, I mean, these courts are in the long-range plan.
Sure.
This is an effort by the pickleball players.
To speed it up.
To pull it forward.
Sure. Got
You
it.
know, so the board would actually fund it if it is in the plan where it's, you know, currently lying.
Right. Got it.
But not to pull it forward. It's exactly what happened with the portico out of Kahiti. They
Right.
wanted it earlier than it was in the plan.
But I would think that the dates should probably be 21 and 22, not 22 and 23.
Yeah, that's probably true, and it's below the line, so it's not gonna really hurt anything.
Okay. We will put that below the line, but as you point out, since it's below the line, it really doesn't affect anything else, so, you know, however we choose to depict it.
I just make one more comment. If they were to come forward next year and ask, you know, say that we're gonna do the design, and the board, you know, would legitimately ask the question, well, how far along are you in your fundraising overall?
The rule is that that before we either do design, award a design contract or award a construction contract, the fund has to write POA a check covering that amount.
Right.
And it's gonna be a design build, so it's not two separate.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay. Toqua shades have been moved above the line in the 21 budget, $15,000. Replacement accounting, financial system, and hardware, we did slide that back 1 year to 22-23, $50,000 each year. Kahidi bunkers are,
Hang on a
Yeah.
second. Can you actually live with that?
I was gonna say, I don't remember. Yeah.
can we live with the current system through 21? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through 23?
The simple answer is, yeah.
Well,
But
but-
should we?
Should we? There it is. Yeah.
That's the better question.
Rick, the only reason why I thought the only reason I thought 2022, and I could do it earlier in 22, is I'm going to, hopefully be transitioning into Parker's position and evaluating staff and kind of going through organizational assessments and review. So I've got Concur to roll out. I think there's a lot that I can improve on in next year.
Okay.
And I was just thinking,
Well,
okay,
I would certainly leave it to your judgment, but I've heard a lot of complaints about the system. I've been in the village for 12 years, and I've heard the complaints every one of those 12 years.
Yeah.
From people that work in the finance department. So, okay. I mean, I certainly will leave it to your judgment, but
Yeah. That was
Parker-
a question I had too, to move it forward, but if you can't, you can't.
okay.
All right, and this goes back to the previous subject, the Toqua shades. Are we still looking at pursuing private funding for that? Because I know
No,
in the
no,
last,
we're not.
we're just going to bite the
It's an
bullet.
operations issue. It's not something that's really ripe for private funding. It's
Okay.
something we need to do. Otherwise, the operation is hampered.
Well, I think that that's something we should even be challenging AWE to help out with.
I agree.
Because it helps them.
Because we
So-
still don't get any revenue from that restaurant.
That's
Right.
correct.
Yeah,
We
we
get
do. We
rent.
get rent from,
Not
Okay.
yet, but we will next year, right?
Yeah, but who owns the building?
we do.
Right, so then why would we be asking for our vendor, supplier, whatever you want to call AWE, to be adding to our building?
Because they're the ones that benefit from doing it. I think that's a position.
The
They don't
point
benefit
is
from it
used
when
for
we
them
get
to
when we
get
to zero
sales.
subsidy, which is next year, they won't benefit from it. We will.
I thought we'd been at zero subsidy
No,
at
We
Toqua.
don't
We don't
subsidize
subsidize
Toqua.
Toqua.
We haven't subsidized Toqua.
sorry, misspoke. But.
You're talking about the yacht
We
club.
benefit since there's no subsidy.
Why, how do we benefit?
Because if you read the contract, I think that eventually, if sales start going down, we will have to start paying a subsidy.
Well, and I would tell you that this year, we're in a loss, or he's in a loss position.
Right.
Now, that's largely due to the COVID effect, but he's in a loss position. The question would be is how long would any vendor run a business where he's losing money? So, and in fact, the reason I look at this as an operations issue is the more people he can get in that restaurant, and right now he's hampered because of the sun coming in the one side, the better off it is for us in the village long-term. And, oh, by the way, there's more people that will be able to use the
Well, the
facility.
same.
I feel like you could have made that same argument for the portico at Kahidi, and they wasn't even considered for the POA to pay for that. When they wanted to put those, curtains in there to extend the use of that facility. So that's the only reason I just feel like we need to look at things, equally
Well, if
in
you
that
wanted-
situation.
If you wanted to look at it apples to apples, I'd say if we were sitting here looking at doing precisely what we did at Kahidi for the pavilion at Toqua, then I'd tell you you've got an argument.
Okay.
Well, the other thing I would say too, Marty, is that we could say the same thing about the lights out, going out to the parking lot, and we should have AWE put those lights in because he's the one keeping people there long past dark. So you can make all kind of arguments like that.
Well,
They don't-
yeah,
they don't hold.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know that I agree with that extent. And I'm not saying, I mean, we're only talking $15,000 here.
Right.
All I'm saying is that they're gonna be the biggest beneficiary of that, at least in the short term. And we're not subsidizing TOQA at all. But we are supplying AWE with all the equipment. I know they're gonna start paying rent. I think we should consider it. I'm not saying that I'm dead set on it.
And don't disagree with you, but we, the property owners, are the greatest beneficiary of keeping the sun out of that restaurant because now we have a place to go sit without shading our eyes or looking back at a bar, and we can look outside as it was designed. So yes, you're correct, and I think, yes, I'm correct too. There's an equal beneficiary there.
Yeah.
We'll leave in $15,000
50-50.
above the line.
There you
Let's
go.
go.
And I just want you to know, I agree with all that, but I think we have to be really careful to say it's only $15,000 because there have been other things in about that price range that keep getting shoved below the line and below the line and below the line that would benefit property owners. So anytime we're considering something, I think it's just a little bit frustrating to me to say, well, it's only $15,000. Well, lots of things are only $15,000 that people would like to have that they don't get.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think one of the criteria of putting your litmus test again there is, does it generate revenue or is it just a cost? And this one, to me, is generating revenue.
Well, I
Even though
want
it's
to,
not to the POA.
well, and I want to think, I believe, Carla, that there's also a difference between TOQA and Kahidi, right? TOQA is operated fully by AWE.
Right.
Kahidi is basically
Is
owned
operated
by
by
the
the
POA.
POA, correct.
So we get
The revenue.
the revenue and from that.
Correct.
So there is a little bit of difference.
Yeah,
I
but the
agree. I think there's a big
practicality of this is, let's say that Andy goes away, and we now, I know, 15,000. And now we have Andy goes away. Is he gonna pull the shades down and take them with him? I mean, it just
We could buy
doesn't
them
make
from him.
sense.
I mean, that's,
I
he
mean-
wouldn't because
Well,
they'd be very custom. That's
I don't know,
that's
let's move on.
moot point.
Yeah, we've beaten this one to death.
Yeah. Okay, Kahidi bunkers, $250,000 each year, 21 and 22.
I see no argument
And not
there.
justified on safety, justified on playability and maintenance costs.
Right.
There you go.
Safety has nothing to
There
do
you
with
go.
it. Although we did have a serious accident at Tenacity a few years back. $80,000 placeholder for a UVC system upgrade to all public buildings. We're doing this initially at the Wellness Center. If that proves out and proves beneficial before and after testing, then we might execute this project sooner rather than later. If we do it sooner, obviously, we'll take it out of next year's budget.
At what
And-
point will we know whether what we're doing at the Wellness Center is enough benefit that we should spend the $80,000?
I don't know the answer to that.
You would think almost immediately.
I would think it'd be very quickly.
Yeah. And
Frankly, this to me is, this allows our people to feel better about going into our facilities, because it really is a safety issue, especially in the times of a
yeah,
virus.
without a doubt.
And this is truly all public buildings, not just rec buildings, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
And-
so that seems like a reasonable cost.
See, all the clubhouses, yacht club, admin building, welcome center, whole works.
Yeah, I believe it's gonna prove out, this is not a new technology.
But this is
I know,
not
I've
where,
got it in
this
my-
is not
my
like the
units in my
POA
home.
buildings?
Really?
I mean, like the maintenance building?
It gets rid of the mold on your evaporated coils and
Does not.
Because they're not
So
public.
it's okay for our guys to work in there and get the fungus and all,
Oh,
but it's
poor
not
things.
our people that live here. Is that what we're saying?
Wait, I missed your question?
Well, you said all public buildings, and I was thinking about the people that work here. Let's talk like, people only come into the POA building where Winston works in the front office. But all those people working back through there, I guess if we didn't put it that building.
The
I
POA building
would-
is
My
included in this,
assumption was
right?
that the POA office is a public
Right.
building.
Yeah.
But it's only in the foyer.
Well,
Well-
yeah,
No, it's
but-
not. The
No,
conference
conference
rooms,
room.
people
Yeah, the
come in the
conference
conference
rooms,
rooms.
yeah.
No, I think it'd be in that building.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a direct question. Is the POA office not included here?
It is included.
Okay, there we go.
And then why don't we, the only ones left are our maintenance buildings, so why don't we just branch out there and do it for another $5,000 and do all our buildings?
Well, we certainly could do that. Maybe we
mean-
should.
What,
Are we saying it's okay for you workers to suffer through all this stuff, but we don't want the people that live here to get it?
I asked Mr. Gagling that, and he didn't think it was necessary, but he didn't give me a justification, like,
is that because they're usually outside doing maintenance, not, they don't work in the building?
In those buildings.
Right, right.
I think we ought to do all our buildings.
Okay,
No,
Parker,
one, I have.
I want you to ask Jeff what it would cost to do this in every building.
And I want to address an aside that goes back up to the Kahidi bunkers. Parker, you said that there was a very costly injury at Tenacity a number of years ago. And are you referring to the person that ran off the cart trail and down the cliff?
No. There's another.
No,
That was serious, too.
Yeah, that was serious too. So there was a bunker-related,
Yes.
what was that one?
I'll talk to you after the
Okay,
meeting.
all right.
Yeah, there's some HIPAA issues there.
Oh, yeah, sure, I understand.
Okay, onward and upward, let's go.
Okay, head count. Okay, we had taken out some admin and codes. Well, first off, initially they were all in, then we took some out, and now we've added back one admin in ACC, January 1, and codes enforcement, one on July 1, one on October 1. So that's what's in there now. We did have a seasonal employee for beach monitoring during prime season at Tugaloo Beach. That person is now out. The capital placeholder has been reset at $40,000, and we're going to have a presentation and discussion on that shortly. And we updated the 2021 headcount summary, which is in your packets, to reflect these changes.
Okay, I just want to clarify one thing, and I did ask this question before the meeting, and I think I got my answer. There's 14 heads showing in recreation that are incremental to last year's budget. I presume those are the people that you needed to handle COVID, correct? Yes? Yes. Okay. So presumably, if COVID is conquered, those heads will go away. Okay.
Are you currently considering them temporary?
We are using temporary. That's at a cost to them, so. And we're trying to turn them into part-time positions. If they are part-time positions, then we don't need them.
Carla, what they're trying to do is get them off contract, which is a lot more expensive.
Gotcha.
So it's
Yeah.
1675 for the contract
Yeah.
versus the.
Wow.
Okay, next slide, please. Revenue changes. Currently, the 3% increase in docks and PWCs is left intact. Kayak is no increase. We removed the 3% from kayaks. There was consideration to increase dock reserve funding, at least that was a question that was asked, sort of a sensitivity analysis. If we shoveled all of the 3% increase in the rate and funneled that into dock reserves, that adds about $17,000 per year to dock reserve funding, money going in. If that funding was increased to 5%, it amounts to about $28,000 per year to reduce shortfalls, primarily in 21 and 22 are the two critical years. No discount for property owners' day passes and
Hang on.
review.
We may
Yes.
as well get this one, discuss this one now.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Well,
Great.
let me suggest, though, I'd really like to discuss that within context of the reserve balances, and
Sure.
Okay, fair
I'll get to
enough.
that a little bit later
Yeah.
if we can.
Okay.
That's what I was waiting on. I was giving him the courtesy of going through this.
Courtesy is always appreciated.
I know.
Pat. You know that.
Courtesy is overrated.
No, it's not. Not with my financial manager, Parker.
Okay, thank you all. No discount for property owners' day passes. Simon is reviewing fee structures yet again. Golf, we have indeed added an unlimited cart fee for Twilight Golf. Pricing is set at $400, and there was a corresponding offset in the number of daily Twilight cart fees accordingly. So more money from a fixed rate, less money from pay-as-you-go.
Did you say $400, Parker?
Yes, that's what's in there at the moment. Per golf management's recommendations.
Okay, just everything I had seen up till now was $300, so I was just
That
curious.
300 had been mentioned along the way, but they came back at 4. Requested more analysis of really all of the unlimited rate structures. Chris Sykes, I know, is doing that. He's not available today to talk about it, however, so I don't know exactly where he stands on that.
I know how much it is.
Beg your pardon?
I've already done it. It's 90, hold on a second, I'll tell you exactly how much it is. It is $91,671.43. If you take in the range, unlimited family, at the 24% discount, and you apply that to the unlimited individual to the family, it's another $3,825 for a grand total unlimited family range package versus individual of $95,496.43.
Okay, I don't know what all those numbers represent.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, I'll be happy to share it with you afterwards when we talk about that injury.
Okay.
Is that like annual increase in revenue? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Oh.
And my point is, we're about to hit a 3% to the people that are leasing spaces, and we're not looking at $96,000 of potential revenue gain in a pricing model.
And I'm just curious, and I recall this discussion being, we need to look at the break-even points for unlimited.
That's
and
correct.
Frankly, I think the consensus on the board at the time was that the break-evens are too low, and we sent them back to the drawing board.
Right.
Right.
And Chris and the Golf Advisory Committee, they incorporated $100 additional rate on the unlimited family, and that equates to roughly $4,000 additional revenue that came through. When we changed the $400 unlimited Twilight cart fee, that gets offset by a reduction in prepaid cards that would come down. Those two netted a $900 increase for the year.
Right, and the big money comes in when you look at the unlimited family pricing structure based on 119 rounds per family year and generating 188 rounds. Being taken advantage of here, folks.
So what you're recommending basically is to eliminate the family and just make everything individual.
No, I'm.
That's the difference, though.
He's saying,
I'm-
okay,
No, I know
No.
what he's saying, but in the end, it's almost
Yeah.
like making the family equivalent to two individuals.
Well,
Because
and
that's
that
how
was
they're
one of the
played.
discussions that we had earlier was, we should get closer to the two. Where does your proposal get us relative to two?
It gets us what Marty was talking about. When I sign up for individual and Marty signs up for individual, we're going to pay $2,100 each. When I sign up for individual and Alice signs up for individual, we're going to pay the same amount. But Alice and I both play unlimited golf, and you're giving her a $1,000 discount.
Well,
for
that's
doing
not
it.
what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, based on the last time that we had this discussion, the instruction back to the golf community was, evaluate how far we should go towards the two in the family rate.
Sure.
So where does your proposal go? Is it 1.8, 1.6?
No, I could get back with you in an email this afternoon. I didn't do that. My point here is that we're at the next to the last meeting to approve this, and we can go an hour later and we won't have the next meeting. And we asked that a manager go out and figure this out and come back to us, and has not.
I don't dispute what you're saying.
Well, it was going back to the golf advisory committee, correct? So-
And the manager.
Yeah, and Chris.
And the staff.
Yeah. And you're right, they should have had it for us this meeting.
Rather than us saying, we're gonna go get 15 grand from boaters, and we're gonna give up 98 grand because you didn't come back to me.
I'm not advocating that, and you know that, Pat.
I know that.
Yeah. So, Parker, here's the problem, is we don't have the input of the golf committee or the golf management.
You know, Chris said he's available tomorrow. He was not available today, unfortunately. So I
But we should have had
don't know how we,
Friday.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna, argue about the fact that he's not available or available. It should have been done last week, These packages came out, what, Friday?
I
We
did
should
my
have had all
part.
the data.
we'll follow up and try to get that to you.
Here's what I would suggest, is Chris available for follow-up today?
My understanding was no.
That means we meet tomorrow.
That means we meet tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, last item, but this is a big one. Increased housing starts. We had built in 120 housing starts permits in the 21 budget. We have been running above that this year and last year especially. We have now changed that to 160 permits in 21. That also hits water and sewer connection fees, tank installation fees, completion assurance fees, water and sewer gross profit from additional water customers. All in, a housing start brings in some $6,100 in additional revenue. So a change from 120 to 160, that's pretty significant. Almost $250,000 impact on net income. So that's why we have built in right now. Just recognize that is a significant change in assumptions for housing starts. And it is supported by recent data especially. Right now, and I'll let Beth speak to this more if she chooses to, right now we don't see any trailing off of housing activity or property transfers. I mean, everything is pretty much booming, but booms do eventually come to an end, and we generally tend to budget somewhat conservatively, so hence the 120. But having seen the recent data, I personally am comfortable with going to 160, but it does, for that kind of money, I think it does warrant some additional discussion.
Beth, let me ask you some direct questions. Last year, what was the total that we had in new housing permits? Was it 154?
No, I was just looking for.
While she's looking that number up, I'd just like to make an editorial, if you will. And it's things like this that causes us to have to go 5%, 5%, 5% every year.
Got it.
We should be striving to get that 5% down to a reasonable, like 3%, 2%, 3%. This number here, if Steve were here, he'd tell you that's the equivalent of a 2% increase in assessment fees.
That's right.
Mm-hmm, sure. I
So-
understand that.
So what we should be doing is that we should be refining and trying to get this, but it's just easier every year for us to say, okay, 5%, okay, 5%.
Well, but the
But that's the
objective
way
with
it's,
the 5%.
unfortunately, it's the way it's been, and every year we go 5%. We don't,
We haven't even got,
we don't look at what we could do to keep that assessment low. We just automatically say, if we don't do the 5%, we've lost out on an opportunity because it compounds and compounds and compounds. So, you heard Cap Purvis say that things like the converting that loan that we get, the PPE and all these things, we haven't even looked at that to see what the assessment really ought to be this year. We just said 5% because something we can do.
Isn't that what
I
we're
found
doing
the
now, though?
numbers.
Isn't that part of our review process now?
Should be.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, we haven't changed it. Only one time in the last 5 years have we gone below 5%.
Well, one of the reasons that we're at 5% for the next couple of years is to rebuild our reserves
And I
to a
understand,
level
but-
that, by the way, we all said we need to be at.
But we did, but we didn't take into account that we can build the reserves without going to 5% if we have things like this.
I don't dispute that, but you can't count the PPP loan
No.
because you don't know if it's going to be forgiven.
Right.
So if you put that into your revenue stream, before you know it's going to be
Right.
forgiven, that's a mistake. You're counting, chickens before they hatch.
Well, this whole budget is chickens before it hatches.
No.
Well, Bruce, I agree with you 100%.
Thank
So,
you.
but I think that that's part of this process.
Right.
Certainly the finance committee has been through this, and they've recommended the 5. So I think we take that under advisement, but as we go through
5%,
this,
but the FAC has recommended 5% every year for the last 5 years. They don't take a look at the macro part of the budget. They just take a look at it. Yep, we can do it. Let's get there.
well, and that's part of our process right now. That's our responsibility. I agree with you. But, so in the end, after November 4th, we should have taken all that into consideration as to what that assessment increase really needs to be. I agree with you 100%.
Two points. For the record, the Finance Committee recommended 4% in the year that the board instituted. I think it was 2.5, if I'm recalling right. So whatever year that was, the FAC recommended 4. The FAC has recommended 5 since then. The data points on home starts in 2019, I'm having to add 2 numbers together here. Okay, 191. Okay, single family, 189. 2018 was 156, and 2017 was 146. Go back as far as 2016, it was only 92, and the 10 years prior to that was all in double digits, not triple digits.
And Beth, what do you project we're going to end 2020 at?
Well, 2020 year-to-date, we're at 168.
168?
So what we did is we added all 5 years and divided to come up with an average. That's the only true way we felt confident to go into a budget with actual numbers in order to do it. If we would have just used this year and last year, these are not sustainable numbers, we don't think. So we don't want to build a budget on unrealistic numbers. We'd rather, so 160 is still pretty close to where
So
we
you
are
went
right
back
now.
how many years? To
We
what
went
year?
back from 2016 all the way to date.
Okay, that's acceptable, because you
5
get
years.
into the 92 here, now you're in a housing recession. And you don't have
Well,
one now.
92 was in 2016.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Rick, I think what you just did on the back of an envelope, if you look at the September year-to-date, and then add in the fourth quarter 28,
Already did that.
which is the budget, she gets to be like 184.
Yep, got it. So, and we still have it going down by 10 per year in the 10-year plan?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so it goes 160,
So
150,
basically, it still has a
140.
conservative bent to it.
Yes,
Okay.
so that's
Thank
where
you,
we
guys.
are. Just recognize, that's a pretty big change in assumptions. And
I think the other factor that goes into play there is number of houses available for sale too. I mean, we've got to be at an all-time low right now.
Yeah, at one point, I think in the last month, there was only 21 houses for sale in the whole village.
Yeah,
12.
down to
I'm
12
sorry, I
now.
stand corrected.
Yeah, so that certainly has an impact on new housing builds, because that's the only option for people.
Right,
Okay.
okay, next slide.
Now's the time to have a rental in Tellico Village.
A what?
A rental.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, other operating costs, request was to review the yacht club subsidy in light of COVID restrictions. There was a question about wedding bookings in '21. Andy will be here later in the morning, perhaps can address some of that. We did review the cost of sales for online liquor. That's not a big deal because we're not budgeting for huge numbers of sales. But I will point out that the state mandated 20% markup on wine and 10% minimum markup on spirits. There were a very few exceptions to that, but those are the gross margins you're looking at. We've been asked to review employee benefit increases versus headcount, wages, and personnel. Kevin has done a lot of analysis of that. We do not yet have medical insurance rates. I can share with you that the first cut started at 15% increase. More recently, that number is down to 7%. We're hopeful it will come in a little bit lower than that, but we do not have final numbers yet.
Is the 7 based on looking out at what the industry is doing, or is it based on what the individual employees are choosing?
Both.
Both.
It's the quotes we're getting back from the carriers.
Okay.
But we build in, to the extent that we know it, we build in the selections of the existing employee base, and we pick a middle of the road for new employee hires that we don't know what they'll end
Got
up picking.
So Parker,
Yeah.
this, I'm sure you can't speak to this right this minute, but maybe since we're meeting tomorrow anyway, you can help me understand this. And it may just be lack of knowledge or understanding, but since 2018, we've had a 33% change in the total of 3 categories, which are wages, benefits, and personnel. And I don't think we've added 33% headcount. So, and I know I just heard you say that there's been an increase in benefits, but that's over $2 million in that time period. We've gone from spending $6.15 million to $8.17 million. And I just would kind of like to, I don't need, every position detail, but just if you can let me know why that number has increased that dramatically over the past few years, that would be helpful.
We'll do some analysis, bring some numbers back to you. Okay, search firm expenses and overlapping salaries for executive succession in 21-22. We have now built in $75,000. It's deemed under the title of HR programs, built that in each year, so $150 in total. And we've updated non-financial indicators based on all of the changes to date. Okay, next slide. This is a summary from start to where we are today. Where we are today is the green highlighted bar kind of in the center of the page. And so then to the right-hand side are changes from one session to the next, to the next, to the next. So what's in there now? We've mentioned some of this already. 37.5 water meters per month replacement, that's $122,000. Water system improvements, $300,000, primarily for pumps. Now this is just the budget year 21. There's more in the later years. Trucks for new ACC staff is at 50. Capital for beach security is at 40. Tenacity Docs for 21 is 188. The boat launch is 20. The pier is 20. We took out the 70 for paving the entrance and parking lot. The $15,000 for Toqua Shades is now back above the line. The Toqua parking lot and walk path lighting, that's been taken out because we just approved to do it this year, so that will not be needed next year. The UV HVAC purification systems, we have $80,000 in there at the moment, and the total capital for all departments, some $3.6 million. 94% of that is replacement capital, and there's about a 40-60 split, it looks like, budgeted from reserves versus operating cash. So that's where we are at the moment. And I'll quickly run through these next pages just to point out some of the highlights. The new trucks for ACC staff, that's about halfway down the page. You might put an asterisk next to that $50,000 number. The next page, Kahiti bunker renovations, we mentioned those are still in at $250 each year. I haven't mentioned this yet today. We've talked about it earlier. On the next page, the metal roof and interior refurbishings for the Wellness Center, building, there's $567,000 in there, and there is no offset budgeted. We certainly hope there will be an offset, either from, the bond surety or, through some kind of legal settlement, but we do not budget for such.
Okay. Bruce, you brought up this the last time that we met, is what was the differential between putting a shingle roof on versus a standing seam metal roof? And they've gone out and gotten a quote. The quote's for $290,000 plus change. So it's about 94% less than the metal roof. It's just something to be considered,
Okay.
you know.
So, Parker, before you get too far, on the first page, I believe, maybe it's the second. So once you get into, and I brought this up to Kevin before the meeting, but if you look at Kahidi Golf Maintenance, that total line needs to be looked at.
Yeah, we recognize that now. We're going to do some cleanup of this today and
Yeah.
tomorrow. What happens when you start adding and deleting projects, you're adding lines to the budget, sometimes they don't get picked up properly in the summary totals, so we've got some scrubbing to do.
Right.
We'll do that.
But it does impact some of the future slides too, when we talk
Yes,
about
it
cash
does.
flow and things like that.
Right.
And then the other question I had was, for Tenacity and Kahidi, we have Green's renovation, that ultra dwarf, but we do not have it, and that's 500,000 for each of them. We do not have it for Tokwa. I mean, that may be intentional, but I wanted to bring that up because I did not see it in the plan for Tokwa.
So I asked Chris that question. He said Tokwa are the newest set built in '07 and shouldn't be necessary and too much shade for Bermuda, but we are playing around with new zoysia. That could be an alternative. And then I asked about the green replacements, and he said, got all that built into our internal long-range plan, but we plugged in 30 years for greens, but it may make sense to do sooner if failure or there's a better option that comes along in turf management.
So basically, the greens replacement, he's saying, is out beyond the scope of the 11-year plan? Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's go next, go on down a few slides, Beth, please.
You were gonna change that, covered
That's it.
courts. You were gonna change those years and dollar amounts, I think, right?
Yes.
It's back over there where the metal roof was, right below it. You're gonna bring them forward into 21 and change your dollar amount to, I thought you said 325.
Yeah, right, they're not in, I mean, they're below the line, so they're not in the budget right now, but we'll move 20 into 21, and I guess 305 into 22.
325, I thought it was.
320.
Was total
Oh,
325.
Oh.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so we'll slide that back. Okay, next slide then, okay, beach is up at the top. There's the $40,000 for Tugelo Beach Security in 21. Right below that in the water department are the water meter replacements at 122. 3/4 of the way down the page, the grapple truck is out because we're doing it this year. And the HVAC UV system, the very last line item at 80,000, bottom of the page.
Parker, back up on the beach.
Yes.
There is the very first line is color-coded orange. It has 20,000 in an out year, but there's no, I didn't see anything in the description to see what that was.
Okay,
That's in 2025.
yeah, I see the 20,000, I'll have to get that. Okay. And let's see, move on, Beth, to food service. Next slide, I think. Okay, there's really, okay, yeah, under docks, wave attenuator is in at 220. The new slips, 188,000 in 21, 228,000 in 22. Kahidi Pier and boat launch are down there toward the bottom, and the paving, the dock entrance and parking lot has now been removed.
Can I ask a question on those docks? The ones that are in the out years out there, that's just for planning in case we can get
Yes.
TVA to give us more room?
Yes, placeholders.
So I have a, back up to food service, I have just a general question for everybody on the board. It's more of a, maybe a philosophical question than anything else, but, you know, we're putting money in for renovations at the yacht club. I mean, in my mind, they're pretty small amounts, $100,000, whatever a year. I wonder, you know, that's kind of the feature facility at this village. Should we be considering at some point some more extensive renovations to that as opposed to, you know, what we've got in here now? And it's beyond today's discussion, but I just wanted to throw that out there as something that we might want to consider. And maybe we need to have some type of a committee to do that, but it
Well,
just,
Yeah, actually, and, you know, the 2010 long-range plan had major renovations in it for the yacht club, including blowing back walls out and expanding. It didn't make the cut in the new plan last time, but certainly that would be something you would assign to the long-range planning committee to evaluate whether we missed something in the new long-range plan.
I'm not sure how everybody else feels about that, but to me, it just seems like that facility is the best location in the village.
Really
And,
is.
we need to be sure that we're keeping it to be a desirable location.
I agree.
Parker, while you're
Yes.
talking about the docks, the $10,000 for that road repair is somewhere else. Where is
Yes,
it?
it's maintenance.
Okay, perfect.
It would be considered maintenance expense, and it is in there, it's just
Yeah.
doesn't show on the.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so last capital slide, sort of the summary. That section down toward the bottom, that's the larger slide that I showed just a few slides ago, and you see what the totals are. I mean, year in, year out, all of our capital plan is for replacements, renovations, you know, that sort of thing. There's relatively little in terms of new assets or discretionary spending. Let's go on, and I'm just going to hit this briefly and quickly. R&M, pretty well balanced. We've got funding coming in at about $2,362,000, and uses going out of $2,505,000. So R&M, at least in the budget year, is pretty much in balance. And you see it does build up over time as you go out into the 10-year time frame. Next page. The Amenity Reserve, there is 125,000 additional paved walking paths. That's about and some redesign of racquetball courts for alternative uses. There's really nothing, this is where we did have the covered courts. Initially were above the line in 22-23. That's where you see those highlighted zeros. That's where that used to be. And funded from the Amenity Reserve Fund. Absent that, then the Amenity Reserve builds over time. We're funding about 111 in the budget year and growing into the 120s, 130s thereafter. So that builds up, but no projects in the planning horizon. Water and sewer, I spotted, I don't even know how this happened, but the water system improvements, you see $300,000 from Water and Sewer Reserve in '21. I reran these slides literally yesterday evening, and before I ran this, there was $300,000 in '22, pulling from the Water and Sewer Reserve. Somehow it disappeared. I've got to go find it and put it back in. But it's in the capital plan. It's in the capital plan. It somehow disappeared from the reserve plan, but I promise you I'll get it back in there. In any event, water and sewer balances are good, start out at about 2 million, going up to 2.5 and toward 3 million. So water and sewer seems to be adequately funded.
So that's where you'll take out, again, in the out years, that Milagua water
Yes,
tank.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. That's, well, you see that in, that would be 29 and 30, almost $2 million total. So that will come out. Safety reserve, there are no demands placed on it in the budget year. And the one we've all been waiting for, the dock reserves. So you see the capital projects, the big ones up at the top, 220 for the wave attenuator, 188 for docks, the pier, the launch, a little bit for fuel management. Second set of docks in 22. And with that, and with the current funding levels, which I'll remind you, there's about 30%, well, not about, there is 30% of dock slip fees and PWC fees get funneled into the dock reserve. So that's where that dock funding of $169,000 comes from in 21, a little bit higher than that in 22. But note, given all of the capital demands in 21, the dock reserves ends with a negative balance of $44,000. Put another set of docks in 22, and there's a negative balance of $100,000, and then it gets back into the black in 23 and beyond. So that's the essence. Now, what can I do to bridge that gap? Well, I mentioned a couple of alternatives. Arguably part of, like the boat launch and the Kahidi Pier, that arguably could be funded from the Amenity Reserve. The fuel management system, that's pretty clearly docks and docks alone. And then you can have lots of fun talking. Well, the wave attenuator, we don't know for sure the price tag on that. We do know that part of that is being spent in November, but depending on what comes out of that in November determines how much carries over into next year. So that's an issue that we've got to deal with, and certainly it can be funded out of operating cash as a short-term bridge, but that's a decision the board's going to have to wrestle with.
Parker, keep in mind that that 220 was just an estimate for the wave attenuator at the yacht club. They're also evaluating the one up at Kahidi.
Yes.
Not Kahidi, but Tenacity.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't know what the number will be.
Or what
Or
the
the
timing will
timing.
be either.
Or
Yeah.
the timing. I mean, it may be, okay, it needs attention in 5 years, and you put a placeholder 5 years out.
Are they inspecting the Tenacity one too?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So you ready to talk now, or you want to defer some more?
Tell you what, let me get
I'll play.
let me get through my slides, and
Sure.
then you can have at it.
All right.
Okay, so next slide is just a summary of all reserve accounts. Nothing really new there. Consolidated P&L is the next slide. The budgeted net income for 2021 now stands at $583,000. That's the highlighted number down towards the bottom, third column. Cash flow on the next slide. Total cash projected for year-end 21, $5.5 million. That's a pretty healthy number, certainly not over the top, however. Notice that operating cash falls $276,000 short of our target operating range at $1.5 million. So there is an undesignated cash adjustment from reserves to bring that back in balance. After 21, then reserves build up at a pretty healthy pace. And you know, by these estimates, hit the $9 million target number that had been loosely set and talked about. It's that by year-end 23. Okay, next slide is non-financial indicators. I'm not going to go through all of these. The most significant change on this is, let's see, where was it? number of new home permits issued. Second column, 160. That's throughout the year. It's paced, seasonalized a little bit. That means on average, there are 80 new assessments coming from, excuse me, that's not correct. New assessments come from POA lot sales, which is at 72 throughout the year. That's an average of 36 new assessments attributable to those lot sales. New home permits at 160 total. That's where you pick up things like water and sewer connection fees, permit fees, CAF fees, et cetera. That was the $250,000 we looked at a little bit earlier. And I'm not going to go through this page. You've all seen it before. There's not a lot of change from last time to this time. Headcount summary is the next slide. I think the only adjustment that was made here was to pull the one seasonal employee for the beach has now been pulled out, pending further discussion. Okay, the next slide is debt schedules. No change since the last time we looked at this because there's no new debt being recommended. So it's pretty much all payments to principal, reduces debt levels through the 10-year time frame. Okay, and now my final slide, I know the one you've all been waiting for. Unresolved issues for board discussion, and that includes Tugelo Beach security, docks, PWC, and kayak fee increases, the wave attenuator, new docks at Tenacity in 21 and 22, and the acknowledgement that dock reserve funding is not adequate to cover all of those costs. Housing starts, we've increased from 120 to 160. Golf unlimited rates evaluation needs further discussion, and we've got a presentation coming up on Kahiti kitchen expansion study for $15,000. That is not currently in these budget numbers. So, and I didn't put it as a bullet, but the ever popular other section, if there's something else you want to talk about, that's your prerogative. So I am done, but anything to this moment?
Okay, I'm gonna take a 5-minute.
Hero.
My focus will just not.
got a little bit of a change of plan.
Chocolate.
Well, no, it's actually a good change. At 11 o'clock, Chris Sykes is going to telephone in, and we'll go back and discuss all the golf rates.
Good,
So between now and then, we'll work on other stuff.
good.
So the next thing in this
you have a
package is the
question or you just
Kahidi
waving
kitchen
hi?
expansion.
She's 80, she didn't look that.
So you want me to start first?
No,
Okay,
we're just going,
You're never gonna get to go there.
that's fine. I'll get a vote later, too.
yes, you do. So, Andy?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Andy.
So I am here at the bequest of the Kahidi delegates of residents that are always looking to improve the facilities at Kahidi. It has been informally spoken to or spoken
There it
about
is.
for the last couple of years is expanding the kitchen. So with the community center done, with a lot more potential for larger events, for bigger events. Obviously, the kitchen at Kahidi is extremely small, was built to be basically a glorified snack shack. So again, at the bequest of the committee, I'm here to request some funds to do a proper professional analysis of what it would take, what it would cost to expand the Kahidi kitchen. The reason why we asked for $15,000, if you look at the next slide, who's pushing the buttons? Actually says 10 there, but we bumped it up to 15. Basically, a year ago, actually go to the next slide for me, will you please? I actually had this done, AWE had this done on its own dime, just to look into the expansion of Tenacity. This was a very global plan, did not dig deep, ended up costing me about $6,000. So, with that said, asking for 15, which of course if we don't spend it all, we don't spend it all, but truly looking into the electrical situation, the construction situation, and trying to come back to the board with a really proper and good, solid, knowledgeable, educated analysis will probably cost somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. So I guess that's about it. Questions, I suppose.
I just have a quick question for you from history. We had talked a little bit about a little bit of a minor expansion, like expanding into that storage closet and just expanding the food prep area. This is something different than that, correct?
It is not.
Okay.
It's the same. It's really, again, getting some professional people out there, a professional architect that can look at the building, look at the roof line, look at the outside walls, look at, where can we, A, find space, and then B, from an electrical, plumbing, mechanical scenario, what's it truly going to cost? We'd hate to go out there and spend, like I did at Tenacity, spend $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and then come back and be like, well, we don't have that answer, we don't have that answer, we don't have that answer. Instead, to do it right, so that at least moving into the 22 budget, if it's something that's practical and makes sense, that we have some good info and good numbers.
So
And
this
so,
is being proposed for next year's budget?
This is the analysis is being proposed for the 2021 budget, yes.
so the goal would be to be able to better and more quickly serve larger groups that come through as opposed to really doing a complete overhaul of the kitchen. You're talking about expanding food prep, expanding that area so that it would speed up service to larger groups, help them be able to handle larger groups? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, not only handle larger groups, but be able to offer better variety. So, right now, especially with the portico and the community center, we have a potential of, 60, 80, 100 plus people. So if you come to us and say, hey, we got 100 people that want to do an event, it's like, well, here are the limited choices that we can provide for you. at a
Right.
reasonable price, because that's all we can execute. A lot of times, we have to utilize TOQA, which then adds labor cost, adds travel cost, adds the cost to the resident, so then it becomes not cost-effective to actually do a meal period there, because we don't have the execution. We don't have the production and the execution facilities to take care of these larger groups.
So to clarify, that would give you the opportunity to provide probably better, more efficient service, plus more offerings to already current, I mean, we already have some groups that size,
Yeah.
right, that we're serving.
Yep.
So it's not just pie in the sky, hope they come. If you build it,
Correct.
they will come. They're already there.
Correct.
But then we also could expand for large, okay, thank you.
Correct.
And you're also opening up a venue for this section of Tellico Village to travel there, because as population grows, the availability of those venues will decline.
Correct.
That's absolutely true.
We have a question from
Won't
online,
happen.
Rick, before you go from
Okay,
this.
what is it?
Norris would like to know, is the kitchen at Tenacity not more important than this?
That's a good question.
The question I have also is, how much are we subsidizing Kahiti? I know the one time we were really concerned, not too many years ago, and that group down there has done a great job, but I don't know that, have we eliminated the,
No, we have not.
we've not, right?
However,
Mitzi,
we
what-
don't compare that apples to apples, because at Kahiti, when we talk about the subsidy, we include a whole lot of things that are not included at Toqua and Tenacity, because we look at the subsidies differently. So in fairness, you're including the building and the utilities and the equipment and all of that kind of stuff when you talk about subsidy at Kahiti, and you don't include that when you talk about subsidy at the AWE managed restaurants.
Yeah, I'm not arguing about the subsidy, I just want to know what it is.
Yeah,
And may I address Norris's question? Norris asked, as she said, is not the kitchen at Tenacity a more urgent need? More than likely it is, and
That's
quite
true.
honestly. But my understanding is that over the past couple of years, you've had to remove tables out of there because the current kitchen cannot adequately entertain all of the people that come in that you could seat, correct?
Correct.
And there was a big issue of if there's an empty table and there's 4 standing in line saying, I want that table, well, the solution was take the table out to take away the controversy. Okay, keep in mind, and this is to Norris's, keep in mind that when you expand that kitchen, you will take parking lot. And when you take parking lot, we're already in the grass. So that problem is that landlocked issue that we've talked about before. It's going to be very, very expensive because it is a whole rework of Tenacity before we get to the point that we can say that solution is solved permanently. Okay, so yes, Norris, it is more, but at the same time, it's much, much more expensive, and it's not at Kahiti. That would serve generally the same purpose.
Do you agree with that assessment?
I do, yeah. Anywhere that we expand, I mean, we Yacht Club or Tenacity at this point, parking is number one.
Okay.
At the yacht club, parking's number one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You would have to expand into the parking lot there?
No.
No, you
If we expand capacity.
Oh, you mean,
So like, for example, a few years ago, we talked
Okay.
about building the deck
Understand.
out here. There's no I mean, if we want to put more people in the building, we need more parking.
And you can't expand parking here.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I thought you were saying that we would expand into the parking lot and take away more.
No.
We would have to expand somewhat into the parking lot at Tenacity though, right?
No,
Yes.
we have the back, there's enough area in the back loading docks area to move walls out, expand the kitchen there without taking anything from the parking lot.
And where would you put that stuff that's out there?
Yeah.
In that
The only,
loading
the
dock
only,
area?
the only thing that needs to be moved is the AC units, which you can end up putting on the roof.
So you'd still have room for the dumpsters and all that, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a few years out, we put it in the long term. Yep.
So if we expand the kitchen in, at Kahiti, does that not also provide us the opportunity to host events that people would come to pay for?
Correct.
So there is a possible revenue stream.
Yeah. And to answer, Bruce, to answer your question, or I think it was Rick or Bruce, you guys were talking about it, but the analysis that I do for the QBR for Kahidi is the apples to apples scenario of looking at each clubhouse equally. And I think we're at about 20 grand for the year. So we were, a couple of years ago, we were talking about, it was almost
That's
at
the
80.
number I was looking for.
Yeah, it was almost at about $80,000 a couple of years ago, and now we're down to probably 30. So we've been able to trim that considerably. Again, apples to apples, not looking at the number that you guys look at.
Right.
Okay. Anything else?
So our goal to get to zero on subsidy on all our restaurants, what would we have to do to get to zero at Kahidi?
I mean, it's growth of sales for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that trend is going in the right direction,
Yeah,
correct?
it's a population issue as much as anything. You know, at the point that
Well-
Kahidi approaches build-out, the demand on the Kahidi restaurant will increase. And at that point, we have the potential to wipe out the subsidy.
Well, and I think Andy could attest to the fact that it has, it definitely continues to trend in that direction. And an interesting thing is the ladies golf league is having their closing luncheon out there because they can be outside. So it's kind of been the portico being built, when it was built, was serendipitous. I think it was so wonderful to have during COVID, to be able to have those events outdoors and be able to socially distance. So some of those things, people are getting more and more used to using that facility because it's there and available to them. To Pat's point of, people from the Loudon campus enjoying that facility. So I think that's great. You guys have done a great job with that out there.
I guess we're at a decision point. Is there anybody opposed to putting this in next year's budget?
No.
No?
How much is it?
$15,000.
It's just $15,000, Bruce.
Oh,
I know.
but it is $15,000.
Since it's,
I couldn't resist.
since it's 15,000, shouldn't we put it below the line? I'm only kidding.
I guess I have a clarification question. So
Fair
we
enough.
are paying a subsidy at Tenacity and Toke. I thought that's what I just heard you say. We are not.
No, we're not.
Okay, what were you?
You pay for the upkeep of the facility,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
don't pay for a subsidy as far as the business inside of the building.
Right, okay. I'm sorry, but back to your number, you were saying around averaging 20,000 per location. How does that?
No.
No, that was
Kahidi
Kahidi.
is 20,000. The subsidy at Kahidi is 20,000. So you run, the POA technically runs Kahidi. Like
Right.
you get the money in, the money out, pay the bills, that's your financial. So you look at the P&L all as one huge P&L, including the facility maintenance. Whereas at the Yacht Club Toke and Tenacity, I break out the cost of running the business inside the building, and then you have a separate P&L that looks at the cost of
Having the building.
having the building.
Understood, yeah.
But Kahidi's different. So I break out in my QBR for you guys, keeping Kahidi, again, apples to apples, at the other three clubhouses you're looking at. So I remove all the facility maintenance stuff off your P&L, just so that you can have a subsidy number that looks the same as the profit loss / subsidy at the other three clubhouses.
Okay. Understood.
Andy, when we started in this, we asked you to include Kahidi in your package, and you told us no, you wouldn't do that because it wasn't profitable. Are we getting closer to you changing your mind?
No, because this year is going to be similar to last year's subsidy, and the reason is because the better we get at subsidy, the bigger the ask is over there. Longer hours, more items on the menu. It's more, and that will continue to drive subsidy dollars until we can get the revenue numbers to be big enough, which even if you look at it now at a 25% increase, we're still at $330,000 a year, which is a pittance. whereas Tenacity Toco and the Yacht Club, we're doing 1.5 million. There are dollars there to pay for proper managers, pay for proper chefs, pay for, things that really need to happen in a good, first-class dining facility, whereas Kahidi, we're running $12 an hour liters. It's just, and again, it's why can't we open up earlier for breakfast? Why can't we open up later for dinner? And again, back to Rick's point, there's 500 people living there. There's not enough people to drive those long hours 7 days a week and actually make money.
Okay, so we're in agreement, we're gonna put this in the budget. Parker, this goes in. Okay, do we have enough time to go through Tugaloo before we,
I hope so.
okay.
Before we do what?
Simon?
Oh,
So right now, we have $40,000 as a plug in the budget for Tugaloo. This proposal came to the board at the last meeting. It's been reworked, and so we've asked Simon, who will own this process, to make the presentation.
Okay, we came to this after leadership of Sue, going through with a bunch of committee members that took time and energy to give us input on what works best down there, and also got involved with the Recreation Committee, actually worked down there, so did several of the board members come down. So we appreciate the process, because I've been here 4 years. Every year there's an issue, and this year we're looking at, let's figure out how best to go with that. So at the end, the consensus was, in order to manage this, the expectations that we have, the best route would be to have it staffed down there at the summertime, have a shed, a little entry area for folks, and we can monitor the facility. The costs involved for staffing, $9,288. Doing a signage, got to do some updates on the signage down there, looking at $2,000. The rent-to-own tough shed, the thing we put down for $300 a month, and I was also asked to take a look at it, how much that would cost. It's not a really good deal. You're looking at, if you do it 36 months for renting instead of purchasing, looking around $280 a month that you pay, and 40% goes towards the actual purchase. So if you did a 36-month, you're looking at $10,206 is what you end up paying versus $5,000.
What's that number again? I'm sorry.
If you did 36 months, 40%, you're looking at a charge of about $280 a month, about $10,260. And if you do 48 months, you're looking at 47% going. And if you go up to 60, you're looking at 55% going towards
So
actual purchase.
ultimately, if we decided to buy, we're paying for it twice.
So if you purchase, that's $5,000.
That's kind of what financing is all about.
But you would have
You
the
pay
option,
for it multiple times.
you would have the option to buy it after year one.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
or at any time during year one if you
Yeah,
made that decision.
that's a good point.
You know.
The only other cost was $100, and there was debate whether we should have money changing hands down there or not. And we were saying, well, Choda's already set up with a point of sale. We can take credit cards, cash, and people can come into a building to do that, if that's an option that we're looking at. The numbers that there should be another slide up there.
Yeah,
So-
I think the next slide, there you go. That's the spreadsheet. It just doesn't have the.
That's a breakdown that Sue put together and we looked at, and that's we're not looking at this as a revenue generator. We are looking at, let's be fiscally responsible, and if you base it on $10 a car is what the rate we're looking at. If you went up to 15, it would bring you X amount of dollars, but basically at $10, we break it down to how many cars come through on the weekdays, how many come on the weekends, and how many days we're looking at. So to give you an estimate, you're looking at the possibility of $11,740 coming in for revenue. And with your cost of $12,888, you're getting close to breaking even, if that ends up happening. And then if you do it at $15, it's $17,000 a year. The little note I put on the bottom there is another option is to do a 10 pass pack. We looked at doing memberships for folks because we don't want to alienate our other community members outside of here. But doing a membership rate, that's a tough one to actually process when they come in. It's better to do a 10 pass pack where you punch each time somebody comes in do it for $75, versus a pass that could be transferred around to anybody, and how can you keep up with that versus doing it this way? You know, if you look at some surrounding areas, like the pool at Lenore City, you're looking at $3 for kids, $4 for adults per day. Loudon is $4 for all per day, and they got tons of restrictions right now on how they operate, how many people can come in, and how you make reservations. If you go to state parks, which are similar to this, they're free, they're paid through public funding. So I think that pretty much,
Can you make that 10 pass pack, whatever you're calling it, a QR code or a barcode that's good for 10 passes and that it ends? I'm just concerned about people losing if you're talking about a punch card.
yep,
Right?
yes.
I don't know. I was just curious, just trying to make that as easy as possible. I hate for people to, and I suppose if you issue that with a number that you can track, if they do lose it, you can reissue it and negate the other one, but then you have to look it up every time. That's why I'm
Yes.
thinking if it's something you can scan, then you know. But, I mean, that's logistics you can work out later, just a thought that popped into my head when you said that.
We did, we looked at that as an option. But like we do with our guest passes, it's simpler just to punch it. It's simpler just punch it each time they come in, and then that one's gone, and when they're all gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
Yes, Bruce?
I have problems with this, and the reason why is that two reasons why that we even looked into this. Number one was people in the village don't want people from outside the village taking advantage of us paying our assessments, part of it. Second thing is that there was all kinds of perceived problems with people coming in there, trashing the place, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you did your study this year and you found out that 10% of the people that come in there from outside the village,
10 to 20.
10, well, let's say 10, because the other ones were not your people that's going down there trashing. They're going in there to use the bathroom, et cetera. But I'm talking about the people using trashing. So you got 10% of the people coming in there. Your study showed basically that it wasn't the people coming in here doing the trashing. The people coming in here that are trashing are villagers. So if you got 10% of the people contributing to the trashing, mostly or less, then what I would say is that they only ought to have to pay 10% of the cost for us to improve the place where it's not trashed. So if your total cost is about $13,000, all they should have to contribute to that $13,000 is $130. Or $1,000.
Wait a minute.
I went
No,
I
wouldn't
went
that be like 1,300?
I did. My math's
Okay.
off. Should be 1,300. 1,300. So if you divide that by the number of cars come in there, it's a hell of a lot less than $10. So you are making money off of the community. You're asking the community at large to come in here and pay for us to keep this place clean. That's not right. So what I would say to you is that if you need to have a fee paid to satisfy the second thing that people said is, we don't want these people coming in here because they don't pay an assessment.
Yeah.
Then if you're trying to discourage that, you ought to be able to charge a whole lot less than $10 to come in here. You're just, at that point in time, you're trying to dissuade them a little bit, and you're not trying to make money off of them and say, yeah, we love to come in here and trash this place, but we want you to pay for it so that our people won't have to pay to keep it clean.
And I think part of what we learned, having been there and watched Simon and Sue was there, Steve, a lot of us went down there and watched this. A lot of it was when the people came in there, like the construction workers or the people to stop off to use the phone or the bathroom or whatever, when you challenged them, they turned around and left. A lot of them didn't even give you the chance to talk about there's a fee or we're going to take your license number or whatever. They just left. And speaking of what Bruce is talking about, that's what we're looking. It's a control of the facility. And my point all along is that when you start segregating the outside community to something that they have been using that we had no problem using, and again, there was an uproar in the community on hypodermic needles and people smoking crack, which we found out that was not the case. the idea is to maintain control. We're going to have an expense here, the POA. We're going to charge all the property owners that expense through an assessment fee. And again, it's not a lot. But the idea is we had a little bit of a test time, and now we're going to do something based on those results. And I think starting off at $2, $1, whatever, is going to have the same effect as charging 10 to dissuade the people that aren't interested in keeping our facilities clean to the point that our residents would have the same impact. So I don't think the fee is what's running them away, and that's not going to affect your budget at all. It's just my concern, like I had with the gate, that when you drop the gate or you charge $10, you're telling the community, we'll volunteer and give you $2 million of our services per year, but we don't want you in our house. And I don't think that's the message we want to send. And that's the point I'll stay with. So I don't have an issue with $1. I don't think the money is what's going to keep them away. Or 20, I don't have an issue with that. It's just, I think the issue is having the house, having somebody check, sending the message that we expect you to leave it as clean as you found it when you leave, and then say thank you, have a nice day as they drive away. Come back tomorrow. No problem.
Yeah, I don't have that problem with putting somebody down there. I wouldn't like for them to sit in the shed and walk. I'd like for them to walk around every
Right.
once in a while, like
Yeah,
a
and they
That's
reindeer,
the
if
thing
you
that
will.
actually is most useful.
But I don't like charging these people that much and having them pay for us trashing the place.
So basically, what I'm hearing is there's not an objection to the proposal. The issue is the price. Is that correct?
Sending the wrong message.
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. So is there a compromise position?
I don't know. Sue and her group can do that.
Well, no, at this point, it would be the rec committee that would do that. You mean determine the appropriate admittance
Price.
fee?
Yeah.
I think a nominal fee. I mean, you're not trying to recoup your cost here.
How many guests are we basing this projected revenue on?
Well, there's 1,174 vehicles that are in this analysis.
And that's based on the data that you collected
Right.
during the holiday weekend or
No,
a
it
total?
was total.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here are some questions that I have. I mean, I think if we do this, we have to consider it a cost. I think that we've just
Right.
decided that.
It's not a profit center.
I understand, but I agree that I think the rate is too high, and I think that we also have to remember that when that Lenore City Beach opens up, we're probably going to have fewer outside guests come because they're going to go there. I think that if COVID ever dies, which I hope it does soon, that may result in fewer people coming there because they will have many other choices. And if I recall, to Bruce's point, the amount of our assessment that goes toward maintaining and cleaning and taking care of Tugaloo Beach is like ridiculously nominal. It's
Yeah,
just a
it's
very,
like
very
$2
small.
and-
For
and-
the year, right?
Right. Yeah, for the year. And
So-
by doing this, and actually because our number came down, because when it was at 17,000, it was going to raise it, I think, $3.75, something like that. So do the math, and so maybe this raises it another $3.
Well, let me start the proposal off at this. If they go to Chota and they get a card, and it could just be anything. It could say Tugaloo Beach on an orange background plastic card, so that nobody else has it, an outside person. We send them over there. There we capture name, address, driver's license number, phone number, cell number, fill out the application, and don't charge them a dime. Now I know who left the mess because they checked in, and now I have a follow-up to go to them to say, give me your card back. You're not welcome anymore. I'll start the negotiation at 0 with those conditions.
If it's at 0, you may not have to go to Chota, because there's no money changing hands, you just
So
have the
they're having to
person-
do
Just do
something
it all out
extraordinary
there.
to enter our facility at no charge. It's not an issue of money, it's an issue of keeping it
Capturing
clean
who's there.
and being civil while you're there.
It's about accountability for everybody. and behavior
Absolutely.
for everybody.
Simon,
Accountability is zero.
I would agree with Pat on that. And is your kind of the way that you're planning on logistically handling this, everything happens at Tugaloo? They don't have to go somewhere else to get their 10 paths?
If you did it for free, then you wouldn't need to do that. If you had a charge involved, then I think you need to go up to Chota, to where we have the POS system. Most people don't walk around
Oh,
with
so
cash.
you're not collecting, even in this scenario, you're only collecting money at Chota?
Yeah, that's what I got.
See, I just think
yes.
that's making it awfully complicated for them to have to
I
go
believe
to
it.
another
I
facility
agree with you
and
on
get
that.
the
I think we
pass
should-
and go to the
If we're gonna
beach.
collect money, it ought to be right at the site.
And why
We can do either way.
And the
It's-
way that you have this, I'm looking at the picture of this cute little shed, which I'm hoping will have a fancy Teleco Village or Rec logo on the door because it looks a little plain. But you could put a shelf at that window and make that window open so that that door could remain locked and
That's
the
his
person could
plan.
be in there. Yeah, so that nobody has to come inside the building. It would pass,
Yes.
everything would pass through the window. Then he could lock the door, she could lock the door and go do a patrol and then come back, right? So, I mean, I think all of that is workable. I don't see an issue with taking money there if you decide to take money, but I really like Pat's idea of starting at zero. We just know who
Well,
you
here's-
are and that you're here, and we can find you if you cause property damage.
Here's kind of where I am. I believe, the revenue is inconsequential. It really is. And it really doesn't affect our budgets. What affects it is what we're going to spend to do this. So, if everybody's cool with the plan, then why don't we leave it up to the Recreation Advisory Committee to establish what we will do as far as charging?
Perfect.
And the $40,000 it's not going to be anywhere near that, are we? Is that what we're talking about? Is
No.
that what we've come to?
Actually, the 40,000 comes out of the budget.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's this,
I like it.
a little under 13.
No.
No. Still got a
Okay,
house,
well-
still got a house, still got the person over
Yeah,
there
you still got
checking.
13.
It's 12.8.
Still got the
No, but the
wages.
number is now like 13, not
Yes.
40.
So it doesn't completely come out of the budget.
No, I hear you.
Right, it gets reduced.
And
It gets reduced.
I don't agree that we let that rec committee determine how they're gonna operate this.
Well,
As far as,
before
because I don't like the idea of them going up to the rec, making them go up to Chota Center. to
I don't
do
I
it.
don't like that idea either.
Well, they'll come back with that idea, because they've already, this is
Well-
from them.
Well, I got
Pardon
that
me,
from the
I think
board
if we
also.
tell Simon that, Simon, sending them to Chota is a non-starter.
Okay.
So basically, that's gone.
And
No.
making money off this is a non-starter too.
Well, then
Well,
the
Well,
charge
That's,
is,
that's a point of disagreement.
Yeah.
We're actually not making money, we're trying to defray some of
Cover
the
some
costs.
expenses.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
And
oh.
then, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
you got it.
First, okay. And I'm totally cool with doing the zero thing. The thing I want you to think about, though, is remember, the second piece that the community brought to us was they aren't paying
They
their
don't
way.
contribute.
I'm cool with them not paying, but how do we respond to the community on that?
Well, you said our assessment is $2. I mean, if it's going to be a fee, there's a lot of places that you go. I haven't done this in Tennessee, but in other states, when I put my boat in the water, I've had to pay a day fee for
Right.
that launch, and it was $2 or $3.
Right.
Not $10. I
Right.
just think that is exorbitant. So that's, I mean, I'm not strongly opposed
That's my only
to a
thing
fee.
about
I know,
the
and
zero.
my counter to that is, I've taken my grandkids to innumerable places in the community, all the way through Sevier County, all the way back Knox and Loudon, and we visited all of these free things, like, let's just start with World's Fair Park and running around with the sprinklers in pre-COVID. There are lots of opportunities in Loudon that we do the same thing, Lenore City with the parks and the playgrounds and they don't charge us.
Right.
But my point
Taxpayers of
is,
those counties and cities
Well,
pay for it.
that's right.
Right,
We're
taxes
paying
pay
for
for
it.
that.
sure we are. Sure we are, but you
Bruce,
didn't
I
pay
hear
for
your
Knox County.
objection, but why
So they
wouldn't we
check my
let the
driver's license?
Recreation Advisory Committee bring back a proposal to the board on the
Bring
issue
back
of
a
charging?
proposal, but I don't want them making the decision.
Right, and
It's
it's.
not authorized to make
No,
that
it's
So
decision.
that's
not.
fine.
And the proposal
We've got
starts,
until next May to figure it out.
right, and the proposal starts from zero, what I heard, I proposed, to 10, which is what this here,
Yes.
it's just somewhere in the range.
And I would strongly like to say that the board recommends starting with 0.
So
My
don't-
understanding
I
is,
don't-
I'm not authorized for fees. That's a board decision. We make,
Yeah.
I'll make a recommendation to
That's
y'all.
what we're at.
But he's
based on
just
what the
saying, you go back to your
says.
committee and say, 2 of us on the board, maybe 3 with Carla, are saying start with 0 and justify from that point up.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the fee. I think what you did this year at the $5, I think it's okay because it sends the message that
They're
we,
contributing.
and we have, we have a piece of private property here that we're willing to share with you.
But wait,
I
to
don't have a
Marty's
problem with that.
point, Bruce, to Marty's point, it also assigns value to what they're doing.
Yeah.
So now what they're doing has a value to
Sure.
them. And it's, I complained about this when we lowered the golf fees too low. And I said, then you come and you play around a golf for $5. You take care of the course differently, you view the course differently. You can't devalue your things. So I do agree to a small fee. I think it needs to be
Yeah.
smaller than $10.
Oh, yeah.
But then that gives that amenity value for the person who's using it as well. And I agree with
And
that.
the other thing I just wanted to throw out there is, I would be a proponent of going ahead and buying the Tough Shed as opposed to leasing it.
Me too.
Well, my only
We can
point,
sell
Marty,
it if we
is
don't need
that
it.
you go over here to Loudon, you can go over there you can take your dogs over and use their dog park all day long. You can go over and use their frisbee courts all day long. You can go over and use their tennis courts all day long, and it's free.
But we pay
It is.
It's not free because you
Free.
paid for it in taxes.
Okay,
We do
so
not
let
pay
me-
city tax
let me
in Loudon.
correct
We don't
Bruce.
pay Loudon city tax.
Let me correct
You don't
Bruce.
pay Loudon County, Lenore city tax, and you can go up there to that park and use it all day long.
Okay.
So
That's a
don't-
good point.
Time on this. Is this proposal okay? And we let, rec come back with their proposal for what we should do fee-wise.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it is.
I guess I just don't trust the rec committee because they seem to be money grabbers.
Well, I understand that, but
I
the board
do.
would have, the board would have the
I
ultimate
do. You
say
should
as to
too.
what we do.
We still
They're
have to
good
approve
people.
it, Bruce.
They are good people.
And
They just
trust
don't-
is a
They just
strong
think that the
word.
guidance is that they gotta make money. I don't have a problem with any of them on that.
No.
So, are we in agreement with that, or
Yeah,
do I
yeah,
need to
yeah.
put this to a vote?
No.
We're in agreement.
Go back.
Okay, so here's where we are. The 40,000 comes out, the 12,888 goes in.
Wait, unless we're saying we're gonna buy the shed outright, then the number
Oh.
goes back to 17.
Okay, are we buying the shed?
Well, I think we'll lease it with an option to buy, and I know you don't like that, but after 1 year, we may decide this is a total waste of our time.
I don't disagree with that.
And then could we
So
sell
let's
the
lease
shed?
it for-
Leave it at the 13 grand.
Yeah, and we could basically, say halfway through the year, well, we're gonna buy the shed, or at the end of the year, say, well, this didn't work out, let's try something different.
Yeah, my only reason for saying that was because in
Save the
talking
money.
to Simon earlier, he said we could repurpose the shed if we decided we didn't need it for this. But I'll go along with either way.
Okay,
Let's go
so
with it.
What could we?
What's my marching order?
13,000 goes in, 40 comes out, so the balance is 27.
And the Recreation Committee is fiscally responsible. I wouldn't say they're money grabbers.
Well,
Okay, we're
I
done.
only go to like charge and rent
Okay.
for rooms. That's a notice.
Okay, so have we got Chris Sykes on the phone?
We do, we gotta do some sound checks, and ask him to speak for us.
What?
Ask Chris to do a sound check.
Oh, ask Chris to do a sound check.
Chris, we need a sound check from you. Chris?
Come in, Chris.
Calling Chris. Car 54, where are you?
He may be on mute. He may be on mute.
Hear him back there. Chris? can
Chris,
you say
sound
something?
check. Chris?
No.
Not well.
Not yet.
Sound check, Chris.
I'm here.
That's better. Can we get him a little louder?
Okay.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna go with this, so in order to hear Chris, we're gonna need to be quiet in the room. So Chris, the subject at hand is golf rates. And the board was kind of expecting to have all of that today, and frankly, we were working towards an objective of not having to meet tomorrow.
I hear you.
So, the floor is yours. Chris, do you have your phone on speaker?
I do.
That probably is part of the problem.
Is this better?
That's a lot better.
Okay, now I need to, I guess, I can barely hear you guys, but we'll do the best we can. I am here.
Chris, the discussion needs to center around golf unlimited rates, break-even points, whether or not to increase family rates, I think, vis-a-vis individual rates. We've already talked about the $400 fee for Twilight unlimited cart rates, so we might touch on
Yes,
that
sir.
as well. I think that's the essence of it.
So the family unlimited is the impasse at this point in time.
Well, actually, we're looking at all of them. So let's
Okay.
go right through them in order.
So what do you want me to start with?
Unlimited individual to family to
Okay.
range rates.
Unlimited individual compared to family.
All right, so the regular individual is going up 10%, which I believe is a break even from 81 to 88. There's never been a whole lot of scrutiny on it because it has been a pretty fair and equitable program.
What'd you say the break-even
And
would
the
be?
family, I'm sorry?
You said the break-even would go from what to what?
It's going up 10%. It's going from $2,100 a year to $2,325, and a break even of 81 to 88 rounds. On the individual unlimited program. And the family unlimited program is going up some 13% in price, and a break even from, I believe it's 119 to 132.
So what was the cost on that, Chris?
The family unlimited is now at $3,500.
Did unlimited cart prices change?
They did not. We had some dialogue about that, and the initial intention was just to eliminate the regular unlimited card options, but the Golf Advisory Committee decided to keep them for the select few that take advantage just for convenience.
So what's the difference in the break even for carts?
The break even for carts, there's no difference. It's the same price as it was previously, and we had less than 15 people participating.
I think that was 2,700, I think, for the family.
It was $19.50, I believe, for individual, but I was just curious as to
Individual.
how the break-even rounds compared to the greens.
It's not going to be equitable. Again, the unlimited card option, we were going to just remove it altogether. That way, all the programs would have pay-as-you-go. But the Golf Advisory Committee decided to stick with what we currently had in place for those few folks that take advantage and do so out of convenience.
So Chris, this is Pat.
Yes, sir.
In individual, you had 130 that you sold last year. The plan is based on 81 as a break even, and your last report from your board presentation showed that you're at 94. You're only going to increase from 81 to 83. 2 more rounds, but you're still 9-something rounds short.
No, the new break even will be 88 rounds.
Okay, so now you're only 6 rounds short of what we're actually doing every year.
It's pretty spot on.
So what's happening is, and again, I'm an unlimited player, and this year I've lost
Sure.
because I haven't
Yeah,
made.
this year's an anomaly, but that's why when we looked at the
No,
family
I don't-
unlimited information,
I
more
don't
deeply
mean.
looked at 2019 and 2018.
Yeah, I know. I'm not talking about me being an anomaly this year because it's COVID. I'm talking an anomaly because I'm
Sure.
not playing 100 rounds of golf a year because of sitting
Right.
in meetings like this. I would be playing right now, as a matter of fact. Gave up a tee time. The point, though, is that we, as an unlimited individual golfing community, are playing more rounds than the break even, and thus we're losing. Now, when you go to family, my point to the board this morning was we have 51 families playing, and the average for that family is 119, but they're generating 188. They're really whacking us.
This year, yes, sir. But if you look at the 2019 and 2018 data, the average is right in the 150 range.
Okay, but the numbers that I show, if I take those numbers by family, 51 family at 119 plan versus 188 August, and I divide that by what they were charged, it comes out to be $26.05 discounted family at the 119 plan. That's how much they're actually playing for the round of golf. And then if I convert that to the 188 rounds that they're actually playing at $26.05, that's $249,771 a year that we're giving away in a family unlimited program for rounds of golf at a discounted rate. Now,
So that's
I am
based
all,
off you're looking at it.
yeah, let me go on record here.
Okay,
I
go
am
ahead,
all-
Pat. You're fine.
Yeah, I'll go on record here. I am all for unlimited golf, unlimited family, and every break that we can give. But what we're talking here is right at $100,000. And the point I'm about to bring up after you leave here is versus $15,000 for a 3% increase on a profit-generating revenue called slips.
Mm-hmm.
My point was made. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chris, let me ask you this question. According to this slide, it says that 2325 includes the range option, so it includes the 225.
Correct. I
So
included
then
it
the price
we could
is
have
really still the
an
same.
effective
You just
year-over-year
added the
comparison.
range. Right? So
I'm
you're
sorry?
still looking at 2100, but adding in the range. So they could buy that without buying the range and still get it for 2100.
Correct, but they currently got the range at no additional price. So to get the same value, it's $23.25 compared to the $2,100 for
Right.
this year for 2020.
Okay, so I think this is just a consideration, and this is a knee-jerk reaction, right off the top of my head. When I say the unlimited golf packages have stayed the same price or gone down over the past 3 years. So 3 years ago, I believe they went down $100. Then they added it back in 2 years ago, and then it stayed the same. And now we get into this situation where as the daily round rates increase, the break-even rounds go down in the unlimited. So I think it would be maybe a more efficient way of pricing this to increase that along with the daily rates, because you've increased the daily rates at higher than the rate of inflation every year the last 3 years. And so then we get into this disparity with unlimited pricing. And I think that I guess I'm struggling to see that just by adding in the range price that we really, I mean, they may choose not to add the range if they don't use the range very often. So now
Right,
you're
and then
back
they'll
to the
pay as
2,100
they
bucks.
go, and we reap that revenue.
Because
Correct.
because honestly, you haven't raised your break-even rounds to 88 in that scenario. It's the same, right? In fact, it lowers
No, if
because
you-
the
if you-
daily rate is more expensive.
So if you compare year over year, what they're getting or what they're paying for unlimited, you would have to include the range so we could do an effective comparison, which in essence raises the price of some 10% and the break even from 81 to 88. So
Well,
that's
So are you going to give them the option of not adding the range? You're going to still keep it
Correct.
sold separately?
correct. That's
I
at
would-
the
I would
recommendation
support
of the Golf
including
Advisory
it.
Committee. Yes, ma'am.
I would just support including it and getting the 2325. Because now you have no guarantee that you're going to get the 2325 if you don't include the range, because they may not buy it, and they may not,
That's for sure
you may not
consideration.
collect that revenue.
So basically what you're advocating is a single price that includes the range, correct?
Yeah,
Yes, okay.
well, I'll talk about the Twilight Unlimited later.
Well, we'll get to that too.
But I mean, I just think we got to keep things a little bit more simple. We don't want it to be complicated. We need to
Sure.
increase
No,
that
and
break-even
I'm fine with that.
number.
And again, we've worked through this as a golf management team and made recommendations to the Golf Advisory Committee and had our rate workshops, and this is where we landed. And now we're having some additional dialogue. So we circle back, take a look at those programs that were, we wanted to look at a little more deeply, which were the Twilight Unlimited and the Family Unlimited. We've gone back and looked at that data and made some additional adjustments that the Golf Advisory Committee approved last Monday. So we can revisit as many times as we need to get things best positioned for golf in 2021.
And my whole point of this conversation is that you don't lose out on revenue by making it an
Sure.
option.
I would agree with that too, Carla.
But
I-
that is fine, and we can move forward in that capacity. That is not a problem.
I agree with what Chris said earlier. Chris, this is Marty, that, 2020 is an anomaly. And so we need to keep that in mind as we put our rates together for next year. And, if we see a trend continuing, then I think we look at it a little harder.
And Chris, this is Pat
Yeah,
again.
and that was where the Golf Advisory Committee, we had some dialogue about it last Monday in our meeting with respect to the Family Unlimited and how to best to price it. We went back and looked at the 19 data because the 20 data is, and again, an anomaly and a little to no value. So the 19 was a high water mark, and we looked at the data from 19 and went a step further and looked at the data for 18, which is right in line with the data for 19. I've made a recommendation, and as far as the Golf Advisory Committee felt like taking it was an additional $100 and $3,500 for the Family Unlimited. But again, we can include the range in that number like we have historically. That's not a problem. And if we need to push it up a little further, we can push it up a little further. But again, that's where we landed as a committee and the recommendation they felt comfortable with. So that's why we're here today at that $3,500 mark for the Family Unlimited.
And Chris, this is Pat again. I agree
Yes,
with
sir.
I agree with what you and the Golf Advisory Committee are proposing. I think they have also, from looking at these numbers, have also including the fact that we have 4 to 5 golf courses nearby that are really within close proximity, that
Sure.
we can be losing rounds by overpricing ourselves just by $1 or $2. We're that thrifty a community, and we don't want to get into that trick bag.
And you're correct. We are at that ceiling. Yes, sir.
Okay, so basically, and I'm just summarizing here, where we are is that the rates that have been proposed for both unlimited member, individual, and family, the board is accepting of, provided that we put the range package in the base and not make it as an option. Is that correct?
And that is,
Yes. Is there any
a
objection?
great way to
that?
go from a golf execution perspective, so that would be not a problem at all.
Is there any objection to that? Then that's done. So you wanted to talk about
Thank you.
twilight rates?
Yeah, do we have do you have a slide that tells our Twilight Unlimited rates?
Kevin, I think if we.
It is on there, yes, ma'am.
Chris says, yeah. There we go. Does that have unlimited on it? No. Chris, when we talked before, while we're looking for the slide, when you and I talked before, and when you made the presentation to the board, I think the number you were looking for, thank you, Andy. The number you were looking for was $800, and now we're up to $925. Is that correct?
Well, that's if you want to take advantage of the Twilight Unlimited card option. Because
Where did the extra $100 come from? What was that conversation? How did you land on that?
Well, it's percentage-wise in line with the traditional unlimited card option, and we felt strongly that the best way to position the package for the overall value of the package for the user and the facility is, again, to do $525 for green fee only and pay for your card as you go. And for those folks that want the convenience of having a unlimited card and the ability to go out and play a few holes in the evenings with a guilt-free conscience, they can buy the Twilight Unlimited card option at $400. So that does not diminish the value of the overall program, and thus mitigates the ability to separate the Twilight cart fees versus just the all-in program. We felt like it was in our best interest to keep those separately, that we could best position it for all parties and best market it at $525 and pay for your card as you go.
So you only need to do 47 9-hole rounds to collect the roughly $300, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Is that what I'm reading?
Correct.
So it would be
Correct.
$100 more than that to justify the unlimited. I'm talking about from the buyer's perspective.
Correct.
Is that correct? So whatever
Yes,
that
ma'am.
equates to, I guess would be 25% of the 47. So I know that this has never been something that you've considered before. Pat White has a question. Go, Pat.
Thank you very much. I'm also noticing, Chris, if I'm reading this right from your Golf Advisory Committee, you have also given them a greater value in peak golfing season by increasing the hours of play by an additional hour.
Yes.
Based off our data that we've been able to gather from this year for daylight and demand, what we've created because of the value is a window of time between noon and 2 o'clock where we routinely have some voids in the tee sheet. So we're adding that additional value, yes, sir.
Yes, and what I wanted to point out, I'm phrasing that specifically, is that you added a value to the golfer because you could have taken that span, given more morning tee times to 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, taking the value away from the twilight golfer by starting your twilight golf at 3. But you moved it back to 1 to give them a greater value.
Correct, because that's what the tee sheet told us to do, yes, sir. That's
Very
what
good.
utilization
Very
steered
good.
us. Yes, sir.
All right, Chris, I like everything about this. The only thing that I would encourage you to do is get with Beth Kuberka and market that as a package first. So if that's at the 925, or it would be, whatever that, if it's 900 or 925, whatever you feel like is right.
And that's one
Package
of the
that,
things that,
sell that first,
we
and
talked
then
about.
greens only. I'm sorry?
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talked as a committee about in general was how we can best market these programs, because there's a lot of folks that simply don't understand how they work, and most everybody on the committee had no knowledge that the standard unlimited and the family unlimited actually gave you a little preferential status with respect to the Chelsea lottery system. So
Yeah.
we're going to make sure we get that word out much more effectively, and maybe even revisit, strengthen the point side of things where we can do a better job with penetration of these programs.
Okay.
So I think you're gonna have to really be doing a good job of marketing, because the first reaction's gonna be, you almost doubled the cost.
Sure.
So-
Yep.
Yeah, so that's gonna have to really be worded well.
Well, and I think that's why I asked you to get with Beth, because she's really brilliant at simplifying things and making that an easy message for
Sure.
people to understand, because she will hit on the fact that you have the additional value for the main season, which is the May through October. And, keeping it simple, that's why I say offer the package first, the whole deal. Don't even talk about how much the carts cost, just talk about the whole deal is the $925, or you can do greens only for, the $525. As opposed to increasing the price by offering greens only first, and then say, or you can have the whole package for $9. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
that's just a matter of how to sell it. I like
No
how
question.
you've landed on it. I like how the pricing goes. I love that you simplified the different tea times instead of having the 1:30 tea time on those shoulder months. I think this is
Right,
way
yeah.
better. And I think
Right.
Beth will be able to sell that with the help of you guys. So I would just encourage you to partner on that.
Yeah, and fundamentally, we knew going in that the After Two, which was what it was called previously, now the Twilight Unlimited, was our greatest opportunity because it was too great of a value.
Right.
So, working through it as a golf management team, and then with the golf advisory committee, in multiple junctures, we felt like the 800 number was about as far as we could push it, and not diminish the ultimate reason that we have the program is to fill those need periods in the afternoon.
And I have a question for you, and I think, have you had in the past an online worksheet where somebody can go in and say how many, estimate how many rounds of golf they're going to play, and, get a determination of which package is best for them?
We've got one, but I'm not sure how we've marketed it.
I think
in
it
the
would be
past,
awesome
but
if
we'll
they
make
had
sure
that
we
option
revisit
when
that
you
and have that
Still
available.
talking.
Sorry.
Say it again, Chris,
We'll do that
please.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know one exists. Again, I came in on the back end of the stuff in February, March, and so I'm learning as we go as well. But I know that's something that we do have available. We'll make sure that the consumer has it as well.
Pat, I think you've done unlimited golf before, right? There's a printed worksheet. Is that correct? That people get, and they can kind of do a calculation of whether those packages are good values for them. I just think it'd be, a helpful thing for people to
Adam
be able to
has
do.
those, and he routinely gives them to people that do prepaid and things
Yeah,
like
there's an Excel spreadsheet that's sent out every year
Sure.
in December, and it will do exactly
I
what
got
you're
you. saying
if the people take the time to use it as a planning worksheet rather than, I'm just going to do what I did last year and sign
Right.
up.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
Okay,
Thank you.
so now that
Sounds
we're
good.
done discussing all the tactical items,
I
I
have-
believe we've agreed on what the rates will be. Is that true?
True.
My only concern is, and I don't have a problem with it, I depend on Chris because they're closer to it, but my concern is that here we've made these decisions on a 2020 year when golf is going out the roof.
That's true.
And so I know that we set those early rates. I go back to Mike Colicone and Mr. White here. When they set those rates, that was to introduce and get people on the course. We're a frugal
Right.
community, and my concern is that you go back to the point where we're begging people to play golf and not trying to say, we're out of tee times. I'm just a little concerned that we might be pulling this trigger a little too soon. I don't know.
Pat?
I don't
Well,
necessarily
Bruce,
agree that
the
we're pulling it.
2019 data, supports the move that we're making. So we relied most heavily on that data, which was the first year of the program, and they kept the price
Yeah,
at
and
the same level, just to kind of further introduce and maybe shift the habits of our golfing clientele to get more used to playing in the afternoons. And we feel comfortable that it's positioned properly. And if it's not, well, then we can always adjust. Even midstream, we can take the prices down if we have to. But I think we're going to be fine.
And I tend to agree, But I do want to add, Chris, one other thing. Because of COVID-19,
Sure.
we generated some benefits because of reduced restrictions on outside activities, and we benefited from that greatly.
Yes, sir.
But
sir.
if
That's
you,
right.
if you recall, you go back, we were marketing to Tellico Village thrifty golfers and non-golfers in this taco putt-putt and the wine and cheese and the night golf.
sir. Yes,
and,
sir.
And if COVID goes away, you're going to have to get back into that because we cannot afford.
No, there's no question that our intent was to grow upon those non-traditional golf activities and initiatives, but most of those are, very social, and we didn't feel like we could effectively do it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Understood.
Pattern, we're going to have no problem driving around, and if we're out of it, well, we're going to get more creative, yes, sir.
Okay, Chris, I want to thank you for coming in.
And I have one more question for you, Chris. One thing that we didn't talk about is,
Yes,
are you
ma'am.
still doing the outside unlimited packages, the outside guests?
We're going to do those. We have a position, the price there, but it's going to go up, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Chris.
No,
So-
thank you, guys. Thank you for your support. Look forward to 2021.
We are too.
We're good. You guys got what you need? Okay. So, let me go through the list of unresolved issues.
You're
that
not going
we-
to call on me?
I'm not done.
I'm an unresolved issue.
I'd really like to resolve you.
And I would love to be
So,
resolved.
we've handled beach security, we've handled the wave attenuator, new docks and funding. Is there more to be said there, Parker? Okay, so we've handled that. We've handled housing starts, we've handled golf unlimited rates, we've handled the Kahidi expansion study, we've handled Tugaloo. So now it's time to discuss dock rates.
Okay, and I want to make this perfectly clear to those people that may be dock captains or boat users or whoever's listening, and particularly to you folks on the board. I hope you've realized by now this debate over docks, dock revenue funding, dock expenses is not only about docks. We just heard one of those on pricing models here. It's about our model to generate revenue and our management of amenity pricing models into the future. Do we manage to reducing subsidies through pay to play, or do we manage to our prior model of managing to maintain current subsidies? So with that, is Brad Spiegel online? No?
I'd say not.
Okay, so and we thought this might happen, but anyway, Brad and I were a subcommittee made up, a two-person subcommittee. We agreed, and this is why I'm asking he's on there, because I hope somebody on the FAC has talked to him, because this is what we agreed to.
Well, Marty's here. Have you talked to Brad Spiegel?
He wasn't on our committee. And we met 3-4 times, talked a couple of times on the phone. We agreed that we eliminate 3% increase in kayak fees, which was done. We agreed that we add an additional 32 slip dock in 2021 and a second 32 slip dock in 2022. We're still a little on the debate on 22-23. We agreed that the dock move listing and dock waiting list must be analyzed to determine the placement of the docks with respect to adding in Tenacity Basin or Kahidi, because that's very important. The dock captains have gone in and they've looked at that, and right now we've got a potential of 4 between the two to move, which won't justify a dock in Kahidi at this point. And not just docks, but pickleball has had an expansion model for a couple of years based on percentage of projected new dock slips on a prepaid waiting list. We developed a projection model that has proven accurate, showing 65 slips turned over and filled during 2020 with an additional 50 on the current waiting list. Our current model of percentage on waiting list is a trailing indicator, which has cost Tellico Village 2 years of lost dock revenue at approximately $24,000 a year, and our subcommittee of 2 agrees to this point. One amenity, docks, has a reserve, and this is where we did not agree. We do not agree on the 3% increase for boat and personal watercraft slips for 2021. Brad says, and this is why I want you to call him, You got to call him. You can't take my word for this. The reason he doesn't want to have a 3% increase is because it's too late in the process to change. I'm saying I still got till tomorrow.
Well, it's not too late in the process.
No, it's not, but that was the primary reason to not go along with the 3% increase being deleted, was it's too late to change. So one amenity has a reserve. There are no golf or no recreation reserves. Dock reserve allocation increased from 11 to 30% in the last year. The proposal outside the committee is to increase another 3 to 5%, and whether the allocation is 0, 11, 30, 33, 35, or 100, the intent of a specific reserve points to achieving a self-supporting status. That's why you have the reserve. 30, 33, 35% is not self-supporting when citing docks are a private amenity due to individual leases, where 30% of the allocation does not support this statement of being self-supporting. Courtesy docks at Tenacity and Yacht Club should either increase the allocation or be removed from the dock expenses paid from the dock reserve because they're public use. The wave attenuator, which I won't go into that, we've already discussed. The statement has been made that all dock-related expenses are not allocated to dock reserves. Since there is a dock reserve, why are these allocations not being made? There are two choices. We can eliminate dock reserves and allocate expenses as done with other amenities, or we can increase dock reserves to 100% and allocate all expenses per the reserve intent. I've asked the question, why 3% increase in slip fees? The closest answer I got was from Rick, because 2% of that covers the inflation fee, but other than that, there is no specific reason why there's a 3% increase on an amenity that's generating positive cash. The only amenity without a subsidy, and the only amenity with a year-to-year positive cash carryover. Obviously, the 3% is not to support the dock, since there's already a positive cash reserve and will be again even without a 3% increase. So, do we manage to reducing subsidies through pay-to-play, or do we manage our prior model of managing to maintain current subsidies? And before you answer, there have been requests to update our pricing model of unlimited golf, which we just went through and changed. And again, even with the changes that he's laid out, and I 100% agree with, you're still not recovering the total of $95,000 that we've got hanging out there in the pricing model between individual and family. You can then go to the cost that we're associating with recreation passes. We give out 25 every time an individual family joins or any time an individual joins, and we have not addressed this undated block of passes that are still hanging out there, which we corrected with the Jim West and the golf passes. We haven't touched that, and that's money hanging out there because people are going to use them. Or they're going to retire, age out, and move out of Tellico Village if we're lucky. The next one is we give currently 25 dated passes every time somebody joins, which they can either give away or sell or use as a family, grandkids visiting. And then we've got a 33% model discount when a property owner shows up with a recreation member to vouch that they're a property owner, and instead of costing $150 for 25 passes, you can get a discount for $100. We're losing there too. So prior to raising fees to property owners, what analysis have been performed by each department that will reduce expenses by a comparable amount with zero effects on performance? And let me give you two living, breathing examples. One that I was involved in my prior life was called vehicle idling time, and I've seen this in Tellico Village, and this is the first time I've ever brought this up. But you walk around in the summertime, you see a person get out of a vehicle, go do a job, get back in the vehicle, and it's been sitting there idling. In the wintertime, it's because of cold. In the summertime, it's because of heat. There is a program in place among all fleet managers, and in my case, I personally was expensed $2 million a year in vehicle idling time. So you can recover well over $15,000 in vehicle idling time. You can also analyze and report back on break-even point for overtime, which is what point does overtime pay exceed the cost of adding an additional employee with all related benefits, and that analysis by department, particularly in golf and public works. And then I've got a story to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you. My point has been made. You've got an amenity that we're managing to that's generating excess cash revenue every year. It is being asked to increase the fee by 3%. And I don't think, well, that's wrong. There will be people that'll be real upset with it, but that is not an exorbitant fee. That is not a runaway, get out of my slip fee. That's not going to make or break anybody. And I think after 2 months, 3 months, nobody's really going to pay attention to it. My point is that we're now approaching a time in Tellico Village where we have to renew these models, and how do we manage to a subsidy? We've got to start managing to make that subsidy go away, because our pay to play is increasing. I can almost use the term exponentially, but not quite. And my question is, and Rick, I don't want you to answer because Rick's already given me the answer. My question is, that has not been answered by Brad or anybody else, is why are we charging 3% increase to an amenity that generates a positive cash revenue? And nobody has answered that question to date, and until you can justify that with an answer, I can't accept that 3%. All I want is an answer. You give me an answer, I'll go along with you.
Well, I've been muzzled, so
I
does
asked you
anybody else
not
want to talk?
Well, I'll ask a question, Pat. Okay, under current accounting capability, it is making a profit. I'll give you that. You're generating revenue, excess revenue. Is that excess revenue, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, is that excess revenue sufficient enough to build all the docks that we want to build?
Sure, yeah, let me answer that. Let me go to,
Without an increase?
we're generating $527,567 from those dock fees, and I showed you on the last 2 meetings that slide. 30% of that allocation leaves $369,296.90 that goes to the general fund.
Right.
We increased 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, last year, 5%, and again, this year. That would have generated double $369,296 just this year and next year. That's $700,000 plus. Yes, you do.
If it doesn't go to the general fund.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't go to the general fund, then what you're going to have to take a look at, Pat, then is what do we not do for the rest of the village so that we can have extra docks?
Well, let me put it to you this way. Let me go back to this slide.
If we didn't have docks, you wouldn't have
Let me
that
go
money.
back to this slide. And it changed a little bit yesterday because the budget process has changed the number, but using the number generated in the last meeting, $5,291,535. There's more than enough money there.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but if we don't go to reserve, if we want to just build all these docks and not build up reserve, let's just do it and screw this stuff about getting to $9 million reserve
No,
balance.
I'll say, as I said before, I will say, forgive me, I'm sorry. Just tell me why. And the reason, I can tell you why.
Well, I can go
And I've
back
already
to,
told
I
Rick-
can go back
excuse me,
to.
I
yep,
still had the microphone.
Sure.
I've already told Rick, and I know the answer, but nobody will publicly say the answer.
The answer is
Do you want
because
me
we
to?
can.
Do you want me to say the answer?
Yeah, we can. And the reason why is because that rate is well below what's available in the community. That was pointed
No.
out by our former board member.
Mike Colacon
Mike
that
Colacon,
did
right.
an inaccurate estimation, and I've got the accurate estimation here.
Okay.
All right?
So, okay, let's see it. We'll see it sometime. But I will tell you this much, that
Let's do better than see it. Let's go make a personal visit, which we've done.
Okay.
Let's go look at 11 by or 13 by 40 foot slip that Mike put in his comparison that is covered with a concierge service compared to 11 by 2420
Shared.
double well slip.
Okay?
I'll
let's
put
go
them
look.
up.
All right, let's go
Already
look.
done it.
All right.
So, back to
So
the
now let me
question.
ask you this question. I'm in all sincerity. You're the liaison to the doc. Is that why you're fighting for this so much?
No, let me go back. You want me to read it again?
No, don't.
Because I said right in the beginning, I'm going to do it anyway. If you've not realized by now, the debate over docks, dock reserve funding, and dock expenses is not only about docks. It's how we're managing to these amenities. We're telling a community that I'm going to give you a pricing model that is well outside the range of unlimited or family unlimited golf and recreation and golf, to the point that we're losing $100,000 based on our estimated rounds that this will play versus what they're actually taking advantage of and generating. $100,000 over here. Then we're giving away passes over here, and then we're turning around to the one with the profit and saying, I want more cash money.
You're telling us it's apples and oranges the way we're managing the
There
money.
you go.
And I would also like to piggyback onto what Pat is saying is that all of the user fees that are collected for golf stay in golf. All the user fees that are collected for rec stay in rec. All the user fees that are collected in food services stay in food services. But the user fees collected in docks
I have no issues with the 30 or 70.
used to be 89% of it.
I
Used to
have
go
no
into
issues
general
with,
fund.
with no dock reserve. I have no issues with allocating 100%. I have none. But then when we come to these budget items, you say, I took 70% of the money and put it in general fund and Tellico Village uses it. And you have to save up your money to buy a dock. But you can't do that because I also paid your expenses out of this general fund over here, and you still don't have enough money. And if you go another year, you can get some more money, but the money that you delay a year in the fee, $15,400 something, is losing us $24,000 in future revenue forever, and we're not taking advantage of that. In my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is why I want to know why. We're managing to subsidies being, or revenue expense generating a subsidy, maintaining it at an acceptable level rather than managing it to make it go away. Is golf subsidy ever going to go away? Never, never. Maybe rec won't, but we can sure work them down to the point, and in this case with him, $100,000 a year. You follow?
Well, I hear your example. I don't know that I agree with it completely.
That's fine.
I think that you're basing some of the numbers on an extraordinary year. And like Chris was saying earlier, those numbers wouldn't be the same if it was a normal year. Is there something there? Probably. Is there as much there? Is there $100,000 there? I doubt it.
Now, when Mike and I did the study 2 years ago, it was still a very big inequality.
Well, inequality is a strong word.
Well, it is. It's we're not making as much money as could be generated by not having the price structure between individual and family, range, family, individual. Same with recreation and free passes, not at more of an equal basis based on the number or a user, like you and me playing unlimited golf versus me and Alice. Simply because we're in the same family, we're going to pay 100 rounds a year. But she gets a $1,000 discount because she's tagging on to my name.
Same argument rec has had every year.
Absolutely. So why not tear it apart and put it back together? That's my point. And then the point is, why 3% to a cash-generating amenity? I know what the answer is. I'm waiting on somebody to be big enough to stand up and tell me the answer I already know.
He already did.
No, he didn't.
I said, because we can.
Yeah, because we can.
That's the
Because I want more cash to go in the front so I can then
Well-
say in the beginning,
Cash is not a bad thing to get.
no, it's not. And that's why I'm saying I'm not objecting to it, but nobody will
raised
give
it.
me the answer.
So right now, as I look at the reserve account summary, we'll be in the red in docks next year and the year after, and we start to recover in 2023. So.
But
and-
that's a-
and let me finish. Parker, I asked you the question, what would, taking 5% of what we give, take in from docks and increasing the reserve, what would the effect be in 21 and 2?
The answer, an extra 3%. This is in your package, by the way.
Sure.
Under revenue, an extra 3% of the dock and PWC fees diverted to the reserve account amounts to about $17,000 each year. If that would take you from a 30% reserve funding to 33% reserve funding of revenue. If you went from 30 to 35%, that is an extra 5 points. There's an extra $28,000 each year going to the dock reserve. But you look over.
But your reserve funding takes into account that there's a 3% increase, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
3 and
it's
5.
It's just a matter of whether all of that 3% gets diverted to the reserve fund or not.
Now then the question becomes one more step.
Well,
And this is the step. If you're going to put the dock in and you're going to make the dock reserves pay for it, how much
Well, that was the
would it
question
be-
I was coming to.
would it be for 100% next year?
Well,
all
what would we have to do
$500,000?
to take that red off of that schedule?
Immediately.
And then the question becomes, what's the impact to the rest of the things?
That's the next
Sure,
question.
absolutely.
So, right now, we're showing 44,000 in the red in 21 and over 100,000 in 22. What would we have to increase the reserve funding from the dock revenues to get to zero in those 2 years?
Well, you'd need, if 5% is 28,000, then you're about 100,000 short over the 2 years. You'd need to take that up to about an extra 10%. In other words, from 30 to 40.
The other option would be to move the 220,000 for wave attenuator to the R&M reserve. There's been discussion about whether that protects the shoreline for everyone or specifically the boats, but
We've never protected the shoreline anywhere.
Yeah.
And whether you consider it the shoreline or not, the docks are still a POA amenity. They're still a POA-owned amenity.
Yeah, I
They're
don't know
not
that
owned
I'd
by
be
the
supportive
lessees.
of moving that out of the dock. And frankly, it's in these numbers that are showing red. So the question is what do we do with the reserve fund to make the red go away?
If I knew the answer to the question, how much are we going to spend in 21 or 22 or whenever on the wave attenuator, then I could be better positioned to answer the question about,
Well, let's assume that we're gonna spend the whole 220.
then you need about an extra 10 points each year. We can fine tune that, but it's on that order, 9
So
or 10
we would have to
points.
take the dock reserve funding to 40%.
Yes.
And what does that do to the rest of the plan?
Well, it's $100,000 that is not available for something else. I mean, money's fungible.
And the other thing you gotta look at is, in this dock expense, capital expense, there's nothing out there in the out years for replacing or repairing any of the docks that we have. Not a one.
It's all money.
So if you're gonna increase this thing, you need to look at what's it gonna take to maintain these docks. 'Cause the wave attenuator's falling apart, and I use that term loosely. So is the rest of the docks. They gotta be maintained every year. And
Let
so-
me, if I could, point out, the current allocation, 30% of the dock and PWC fees is diverted to the reserve funding. But that doesn't mean that the other 70% is going to the general fund and to support other activities. In fact, using current accounting allocations, there's $165,000 of maintenance expense in the 21 budget. There is an overhead allocation of $100,000, but there's some real money being spent there to account for docks, to manage docks, to take payments on docks, to keep the waiting list on docks and RVs, and contact people to fill up those spaces. There's $24,000 in utility expense and $18,000 in taxes, licenses, and insurance. By the way, insurance is an ever-increasing number because
Yeah, we learned that one last April.
because insurers do not like docks, period. And we're fortunate that we're able to get affordable insurance for our dock base that's already installed. So cash flow from docks in 21, you would take the net income of $224,000, add to that the depreciation expense of $59,000, a non-cash entry against the P&L. So you've got $283,000 of cash flow from all sources and to all ends coming in, and right now we're allocating $169,000 of that to reserves. So it's not a 70-30 split. It's something, I haven't figured the arithmetic, but it's something much closer than what you might think it is. And if you took that to from 30% to 40%, I mentioned that would be another roughly $26,000-$28,000 each year, 2 years, to bring you back into
Well,
that.
following up on what Rick says, using the numbers presented today, what those allocations are, what we need to put in there, you're saying, which is matching what I'm saying, you rework the numbers and it's going to come out to be somewhere about 40% an allocation. And I'm sure if it was 39 or 47 or whatever the number is, your numbers would be accurate. That is more than equitable to go along with what this program is. And again, you have dock reserve, no gas, no golf, no recreation, but you do have docks. And the idea is get them in, start the depreciation, start the revenue generation, and get our money back in. And let Beth and all of these people on the waiting list and all the people that Beth will be talking to that want to market towards docks have an opportunity. That's what we're looking for here. Not looking on canceling docks or putting them below a line or above a line. It's find out a way to put them in, manage them, and pay for them and generate this excess cash. But not to the point of the same revenue model that we have generating where we have 100,000 or 50 or whatever excess in golf and recreation and all this, and over here you're pulling in excess revenue, which we all agree is happening. Now, how we account for it, that's okay with me. I just want the money to reduce the subsidies, and I would like for this board and the staff to start thinking in the terms of we're in a pay-to-play, and we need to start working on reducing these subsidies. And it goes right back to what Bruce was saying. Should it be a 2%, 3%, 4% assessment? And this ties in heavily to that. So my point.
Well, I got one more point on docks, and then.
Please.
Okay, my point is that we're gonna build 64 new docks over the next 2 years, right?
Mhm.
I want you to be thinking about, and the Marine Advisory Committee, what are we gonna do after that? And the reason why is because if we're adding 160, and that's what the number that we talked about, new homes.
Yeah.
Those are 160 people that are gonna want, probably a good percentage of them are gonna want docks. And you're then gonna have to say, yeah, we took care of those guys back in 21, but we can't take care of you, so.
And realistically.
Are we gonna have to change our advertising?
Yes, you are, because
Yeah.
realistically, you're getting to a point where there will be no more allowed ever.
Right.
And so
And that's gonna happen.
we need to start practicing on that line that we're gonna be selling people, or that marketing, to say, no, there are none, and you have a long waiting list.
We also
Carla?
might have to do some creative thinking, because this is something that I've given an awful lot of thought to, because I get many, many requests, as I'm sure all of you do, about the boats that are sitting there that may go out of the dock once a year, maybe not, right? And so I visited a community in South Carolina that the POA owned a handful of pontoon boats that they rented at a very nominal fee to their people the one weekend a year when their grandkids came in and they took their boat out of the slip. And that freed up a bunch of their boat slips, because people were happy to have a boat that they could use 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year, which was a lot less money than anything else. So I think that when we get to that point, we may have to consider some different alternatives than providing a boat slip for everybody who wants one, and that could alleviate some of the pressure on that. But, all of that said, I think we really need to look at the fact that a lot of these, Pat has constantly talked about member value, right? So the benefit versus the cost. And as we continue to increase our assessment, as is necessary, and as we talked about when we built 2 new amenities, and we continue to increase user fees ahead of inflation, that's a double whammy. And so, your member value goes down when you continue to do that. So I think we need to take a good, long, hard look at those increases on the docks and personal watercraft.
So, where does that put us?
I think we leave it in for this year.
We need what?
I think we leave it in.
Do we
I think we
tell Parker to up the allocation to dock reserves?
Or you can tell
To
them
to
that.
follow your example, I think you're exactly right, and to at least zero it out, so you don't go in the red.
Well, that's kind of where I am, but.
I agree.
So, if we do that, you're okay with the 3%?
Yes. I do not think 3% is unfair to the conditions.
Well,
that-
especially considering the entire budget is built on 2% inflation.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
and plus, it is still an extremely good value. There's no better value in Tellico Village for golf or recreation or restaurants when you compare to the value we get from our slips. And again, it's not comparable to a single well, but it is still an outstanding value. So the 3% is acceptable.
Parker, let me ask you a very direct question. How much damage do we do to the rest of this budget if we up the allocation to reserves for docks to 40%?
Well, it's roughly $100,000, but, the rest of the budget is in pretty good shape right now, so I don't think we're not struggling to get our heads above water.
So, I'm going to ask for a motion to up the dock reserve to 40% and institute for 2021 a 3% rate increase.
One thing though, Parker said, and 100% have faith, trust, and confidence in Parker, is that he said he was going to go back and look at what that number needs to be, whether it's 40, 39, 42, 47.
That's fine. We can make the motion for up to 40%.
Generally speaking,
Whatever
we don't-
zeros it.
That's the motion.
Generally
That's the
speaking,
motion.
we don't vote on individual pieces in the
I
budget.
understand, but that's the only way to
But I
get
think
past
we
the
just
thing
reach
fast.
a consensus.
All you got to do is say consensus like we've done on the rest of them.
So is there anybody opposed to doing this?
No.
Okay, we're done.
The only
Parker, you understand
Yeah,
what
I understand.
what we're asking you to do? Good.
The additional question that I have is you just mentioned it, Rick, and that is that the guidance to the staff was a 2%, based on a 2% inflation rate. And we have to remember that that applies not only to expenses, but also revenue, especially user fees. So,
I understand
so
that.
we're ahead of that on all of our user fees so far.
But the other thing that comes into the analysis is competitiveness.
I get it.
So,
Just a reminder.
okay, so that was dock rates.
That was the other.
Now,
Other.
the question becomes that I'll pose to the board. We have covered every open issue that we had coming in here today. Are there any others?
We haven't gone over all the rates yet, have we? Have we? Have we gone over rates?
I thought we had.
Meaning-
We went over rates in the departmental budget reviews.
But
We
did
certainly went over water and sewer, that's the other big one.
Did we get over, I guess I'm asking a question, did we get to the point yet where we're discussing the potential for charging for use and rooms? Did we got there yet?
No,
There's no proposal to
There's no
do that.
That
proposal.
has
do that.
not been proposed, and,
Ever.
and those people listening,
And by the way,
He did not
I
make
would
that
certainly
proposal.
not be in favor of it.
and it is, no.
Just want to make sure.
I do have one more.
I don't want death by quilting.
Or,
You don't,
or
You wanna
Those
anybody
people have
using
needles.
those rooms.
Marty, you had something.
Yeah, I've got a few things on my list. I know Carla had something too.
Okay.
But,
He can go first.
you okay? And I talked to Kevin about some of these. I had a question on the bad debt expense, because the bad debt expense is increasing every year, and the numbers look pretty high to me. So what I did is I thought that probably the basis of that is the number of non-paying assessment, right? At least that's what I was doing. But when I averaged it out, those non-paying assessments are not going up, number of property owners, that we do not project those to go up, but yet we were projecting bad debt expense to go up. I could see some of that just from a annual assessment fee increase, but the average, when I did it, was like $500 to $600 a month for each of those, if I just took it divided by the unpaying accounts. So just asked to take a look at that, see if those numbers looked right.
We will look at that. My off the top of the head answer is it's probably due to compounding of late fees, legal fees, interest, that sort of thing on a base level of delinquent accounts. So those numbers do tend to build up over time as you go out into the projected period.
Parker, one time we looked.
We'll confirm that, though.
Along those lines, one time we looked at what point in time do you realize that these are completely uncollectible and you're not going to get anything? So essentially we write them off and say, I think we're carrying them all forever, aren't we?
We do, on the basis that,
We
you know,
may
there's
get one
there's
lucky.
always a glimmer of hope, you know,
We
when.
may get lucky.
Well,
Are you talking about property owner assessments?
No, I'm talking about
Bad
bad
debt.
debt.
bad
Well,
debt
People that don't
expense.
pay their assessments.
Yeah, but can we take over their property?
Well,
Well, the question becomes, Marty, is the property worth taking over?
Because then we have to
So
pay
you,
the taxes
you
on
make
it.
a judgment, and in some cases, and Beth helps us with this, in some cases, the foreclosure process would far exceed the value of the property.
I understand, but with
Yeah.
making those decisions is what I interpreted was what Bruce was saying. Let's just make those decisions and move
Yeah,
on,
we're
one way or the
we're
other.
just carrying them forever on the glimmer of a hope we might collect one day.
yes. Well, and the alternative is if you completely close out the account and extinguish that debt, then you have no basis for trying to collect anything
Right.
from that owner
Are these
ever.
mostly on lots?
Yes, absolutely. It's all on lots. I mean, there might be, on rare occasion, a house that comes on the list for a brief period of time. But if the delinquency is on a house, then yes, you can foreclose on the house. Somebody, sometime, somewhere will eventually pay that delinquent assessment if it's got a house on it.
Okay, so, and the reason I'm bringing these things up is because they impact our reserve balances, and I think a lot of us are looking at reserve balances in the out years. The other item that I asked Kevin to look at was our maintenance expense. Over time, it was going down, which I was a little surprised about that. Just if you look at the total maintenance expense line item in the budget. So just look at that, see if that makes sense. We talked a little bit about capital and about, the majority of capital, 94% being replacement capital. We don't really review those items as a board, and unless we go through them individually, and then we ask questions. I think what I would propose is that we send a challenge back to Winston saying, hey, take a good look at all those maintenance capital items. They amount to 94% of a close to $4 million capital budget. And is there anything in there that we don't necessarily have to do? And we should be doing that every year anyway, so.
I thought we looked at those as we went through the individual departments.
That's what I thought.
We did.
Yeah.
Sort of, but in my mind, we didn't scrutinize them. Maybe you guys scrutinized them closer than I did, I don't know, but I'm just saying, it didn't seem like we had a lot of discussion on those items. And I don't know that we would know enough about it anyway to make those decisions. That's why I just throw it back at Winston.
See, I think that's where we're kind of like in a loop, if you will, because we do look at those individually as they come through in the year of execution. We do. We get down in the weeds and look at that. We don't look at it as we go through sometimes because we say trend is, and we're within the trend, so we don't, but it is, as you've said earlier, it impacts how we determine what the assessment is.
Exactly.
And once that assessment is set, we don't adjust that assessment. It's there for the year. So that's your point, is that, if you use those and you use that in the expense to set the assessment, there's a fallacy there if you haven't scrubbed that. We scrub it after the fact.
Well,
Yeah, we do, but there's always this thing in the back of your mind when we're looking at those during the year. Well, it's in the budget.
Right.
So all I'm saying is that maybe there needs to be a tighter scrutiny of what makes the budget in the first place. That's how we handled it where I came from.
Yeah, I understand that. That's how we handled it too.
One other reasonableness test, and admittedly, you can debate all afternoon whether our accounting procedures for depreciation are right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, do we depreciate things too quickly, not quickly enough? Is straight line the appropriate method to use, whatever? All that said, though, there's over, in most years, $2 million of depreciation expense charged against the P&L. And so one reasonableness test is this: over time, is your spending, your capital spending for replacement capital roughly equal to your depreciation? If depreciation is a proxy for the rate at which your installed capital base is declining, depreciating over time, then your replacement capital number should be somewhere within shouting distance of depreciation, and in our case it is.
Okay.
So then the final item that I have, and I know everybody's asking the same question, is, okay, what are we going to do about the assessment for next year? If we're done here with this review and we have one more November 4th, it seems like we need to be prepared to make that decision on our November 4th meeting. And I don't know if that means that we just say, okay, we know it's roughly, 100,000 per 1%, or if we need any other type of sensitivity run in preparation for that meeting. So it's kind of a question, probably more than anything.
In the past, what we did for that, getting into that decision, and maybe we should do it again, is we asked him to run scenarios. You got the budget set, your expenses all. Run it 3%, run it 4%, run it 5%, and show me what the impact is.
Okay, that's the sensitivity that I was talking about. So that if that's how you do it, then I think that's good.
That it?
Yeah.
Carla?
All right, I just have a couple of small questions. So on beach security, based on what we've talked about today, I know the number's going to change as to the budget for 2021, but there's nothing in the budget for subsequent years. And are we going to need that personnel in there, or is that going to? Okay, so we might need, so for the 10-year plan, we don't have anything built in there for ongoing. If we've got a person out there, they're going to cost us I'm assuming they want to get paid every time they're out there.
Gee
Yeah,
whiz,
funny
what a
thing.
novel
Rude.
concept.
So weird. So that, the other question I had was, on the reserve account summaries, this is just a wow question. We make 2% interest on those?
New money, yeah, we've had some CDs placed at 2%. That's come down a little bit most recently. That was the assumption going in.
That's awesome. Okay. And the last question I have is water and sewer. In this budget, it looks like we've increased revenue by about 580,000 and increased expenses by 217,000. Is my math off on that? And just curious as to the disposition of the 360 some odd thousand
And where
difference.
does it look like it went into reserves, or?
I can't tell, that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Where the 360 goes. And again, just tell me if I'm wrong. I have been before.
Would you state that again? I want to make sure I'm kind of
Okay,
following the
and
question.
yeah, you can tell us later, but it looks to me like in water and sewer, we've increased revenue by 580,000 or projected revenue, and projected expenses by only 217,000. So if I'm reading that wrong, just let me know, or just curious as to what the disposition of that difference of 360 some odd $1,000.
We'll get an answer for you.
Thank you.
My guess is it's bound up in the wholesale water rate, but I'll confirm.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Anybody else? Okay, so that brings us to the question, do we need to meet tomorrow?
What we talking about?
There you go. Parker, when can you have basically what you're going to present to us on the 4th?
Well, we'll start working on it this afternoon, and since we're not meeting tomorrow, that gives us a good full workday to try to get further along with this. Let's see, today's
And you
Monday.
can do the sensitivity analysis on
Yeah,
the,
sure.
the
Yeah, on
assessment?
the docks,
Okay.
the assessment rate. One thing we do need to take plenty of time on is scrubbing the data. We know that there are some summary totals in the late years that are not being picked up correctly. We just need some time to go through and make certain that we've caught every single one of those. So we need a few days.
So where we are today is we're not meeting tomorrow. We do have a meeting on the 4th. Frankly, I don't believe we're going to need the whole session for budget. Would you agree with that assessment?
Probably. Now, the 4th is
The
your-
reason
4th is
being
your
is
regular
there's some
board
other
meeting.
things that should be on that agenda.
Yeah, that's at the regular monthly board meeting.
Yes,
and,
the afternoon session.
Yeah, and we won't, I mean, given what
What do you need, an hour?
what appears to have been resolved today, and I know, it's never over till it's over, but, yeah, I think an hour would probably be adequate
Okay.
on that agenda.
So that's the plan. And by the way, so everybody remembers, on the 4th, we're going to start the morning session at 9 o'clock because we have an appeal. I guess that,
Except,
we're done.
except I don't have to be there.
I don't have to be there.
Oh, you should be there anyway. How else would we get entertained?
Are you recused?
Okay,
We are both recused, but should we be there is the question. Can we be there?
You can be there.
You can be there.
You're just not going to vote. And whoever attended the meeting, they're recused, but they're also a witness. That's why they're recused.
That's you, right?
Yes.
So you're not excused, you're recused.
recused.
That means you're still there.
That means re-excused, right?
Oh, well, thank you. You don't like mint, huh?
No, I love men, but I'm trying not to eat a lot of sweets.
Wow, that is disappointing.